Chapter 1088. Shen Chuyue stepped forward and said, Elder Xie, you don't know, that evil Dr. Gui Tong is a bit strange. She is already an alchemist at such a young age, and her alchemy skills are unfathomable. No one knows what level she has reached. But we heard that when Empress Dowager Yan Shi of the Great Chu royal family was looking for a husband, there was a bloodline pill at the wedding, and it was extraordinary. Otherwise, how could she make the Black-Field Ming Zun think so highly of her? I didn't make it clear to you before, so you misunderstood. Shen Chuyue's words gave Elder Xie a way out of the embarrassing situation. Oh. It turns out that this evil Dr. Gui Tong is so powerful. His face softened a bit, and he nodded and said, since she is the person that the Black-Field Ming Zun thinks highly of, she is naturally different. As if the person who despised Luo Qingtong just now was not him. In this regard, Shen Chuyue and others did not even change their faces, and they all smiled and agreed. Then, Shen Chuyue said carefully, then Elder Xie, she meant that she asked him to help her. Elder Xie naturally understood what she meant. Seeing that the other party had spoken well and saved his face, he nodded proudly and said, sure. When we go to the Western Wilderness, I will find time to go to the Black Field to meet Ming Zun and plead for you. When Elder Xie said this, he thought that Shen Chuyue and others would be grateful, but she said awkwardly, she wanted to let evil Dr. Gui Tong make a move first, and then deal with Luo Qingtong. What's more, this time they made a move to deal with Luo Qingtong, although the first one was Mo Chenxian, the two of them were not involved from the beginning to the end. But who didn't know the role they played in it? If Luo Qingtong told this to evil Dr. Gui Tong, thinking like this, Shen Chuyue suddenly became anxious. She asked, Elder Xie, can you hurry up? Shall we go to the Black Field today and invite that evil Dr. Ghost Eye over? Humph. Hearing this, Elder Xie's face fell. What was wrong with Shen Chuyue? So tactless? It was enough that he had agreed to her request, but she still wanted a yard after taking an inch. Today? Putting aside the fact that he might not be able to meet Ming Zun today, he had just arrived here today. How could he possibly be tired from the long journey because of her? As Elder Xie thought of this, he suddenly felt very uneasy. Seeing that his complexion was not good, the disciples around him suddenly stood up and said to Shen Chuyue, Deacon Shen, it's better to be content with what you have. Elder Xie, you've worked hard today. Let's talk about your matter later. Since they had already said this much, Su Deheng and Shen Chuyue naturally couldn't continue. But thinking that it was very likely that Luo Qingtong had already passed the news to evil Dr. Gui Tong. If they didn't invite evil Dr. Gui Tong over as soon as possible, it was very likely that after the latter received the news, he wouldn't come to treat them anymore. Thinking like this, the two of them suddenly felt anxious. At this moment, a mournful voice rang out. Then, a faint cold air came out of Yu Wenma's room. It was the innate cold disease in his body acting up. Hearing the screams, Elder Xie fiercely frowned and turned to leave. In case Shen Chuyue and her husband asked him to do something again. Chapter 1089. Squeak squeak, a weak but sharp sound rang out. Then, a black shadow suddenly scuttled out from Elder Xie's sleeve and ran towards Yu Wenma's room. Gold-seeking hamster. Seeing the black shadow scuttling out, Elder Xie's expression suddenly changed and he hastily chased after it. However, the gold-seeking hamster's speed was extremely fast. In a flash, it had already scuttled into Yu Wenma's room. The door of the room opened a crack, just enough for the gold-seeking hamster to pass through. Gold-seeking hamster? Hearing Elder Xie's exclamation, Shen Chuyue's expression also froze. She knew about the gold-seeking hamster. It was the treasure of their celestial palace. The gold-seeking hamster's sense of smell was extremely sensitive, especially when it came to finding treasures. It was simply like a natural radar, the kind that could naturally play back. As long as a treasure was in a place before, it would leave behind a long and dense scent. After that, even if the treasure was no longer there, it would still be able to follow it. Now that it suddenly ran into Yu Wenma's room, could it be that it discovered some treasure on his body? Thinking of this, Shen Qiuyue hurriedly pulled Su Diheng into the room. Elder Xia and the rest were already inside. Yu Wenma was lying on the bed, his expression incomparably painful. The cold air in his body would flare up every 2 hours. At that time, the cold air would invade his body, corroding his bones and devouring his heart. It was truly miserable. Every time this happened, his heart would be filled with regret. Why did he despise Luo Qingtong so much in the beginning? Why did he allow his own mother and sister to treat her badly? Why did he allow Tianyu's royal family to ignore her? If it wasn't for this, he would still be the Yu Wenma who enjoyed the reputation of being a genius in the empire of Qin's sacred academy. He would still be the proud student of the Soul Academy's great teacher. He would still be the genius expert who could possibly reach the peak in the future. It was laughable that for the peak, he despised Luo Qingtong in every possible way, thinking that she wasn't worthy of him. But only now did he realize that without her, he was nothing. He was even worse than a cripple. So what if he was a strong expert? In the end, he still couldn't withstand the onslaught of the innate cold. Thinking of this, Yu Wenma felt pain and regret in his heart. He knew that Luo Qingtong had deliberately left his strength intact. She wanted him to experience the feeling of being powerless despite having the strength to take revenge on him for despising her and the Luo family because of his strength in the past. Yu Wenma rolled on the bed in pain. The black shadow stopped in front of his chest. Creak creak. It was a golden mouse the size of a palm. Its fur was very smooth, soft, and round. There was even a tuft of white hair on its head. Creak creak. It was clawing at Yu Wenma's chest. Its 4 little claws were very happy, and its round little butt was shaking. Elder Xie rushed forward and picked it up. Then, he looked at Yu Wenma's chest. Seeing that there was a faint trace of a pendant, she immediately raised her eyebrows and asked, was there something hanging on his body? Shen Qiuyue looked at Su Diheng. There was a pendant, Su Diheng hurriedly said. It was said to be his and Luo Qingtong's engagement token. Luo Qingtong? Elder Xie's eyes turned, bring me to where she lives. Okay. Chapter 1090. Especially Shen Qiuyue. She knew the peculiarity of the gold-seeking hamster. Naturally, she knew why Elder Xie went to Luo Qingtong's place. She didn't expect that little bitch to have a treasure that could cause the gold-seeking hamster to react. She was secretly happy, but then she felt some regret. They didn't know about this before. Otherwise, that thing wouldn't have fallen into Luo Qingtong's hands. The gold-seeking hamster's ability was strange. Ordinary treasures couldn't enter its eyes. Since it reacted to the pendant that Yu Wenma once wore, it meant that the pendant was extraordinary. She didn't know what level of treasure it was. It was really a pity. On the other hand, Elder Xie was very happy. He brought the gold-seeking hamster out because of the incident in the far west wilderness. He didn't expect to have such a pleasant surprise here. Something that could attract the gold-seeking hamster's attention must be a treasure of the Saint Realm or above. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary treasure. Thinking of this, he suddenly smiled happily. The group arrived at Luo Qingtong's place. Elder Xie, this is where Luo Qingtong lives. Su Diheng and Elder Xie stood not far from the courtyard of the Heavenly Demon Group's encampment. They raised their hands and pointed at the courtyard in front of them. It's here? Elder Xie looked at the courtyard and wanted to say something. Suddenly, the gold-seeking hamster in his arms broke free from his hand. Squeak squeak. The little gold-colored hamster with white fur scurried into the courtyard in front of them. Its movements were fierce and fast. It was even faster than when it went to find Yu Wenma. In the courtyard, Luo Qingtong was sitting in the pavilion and talking to Little Pig. This map of the Saint Monarch's tomb is only a part of the map. It's quite interesting. She fiddled with the jade thumb ring in her hand. After activating the Repair Eye ability, Luo Qingtong could easily see that the small map in the center of the jade thumb ring was incomplete. For maps had to be stacked together to reveal the true appearance of the map. This method was really novel. If Luo Qingtong didn't have this eye ability, she probably wouldn't know the mystery behind it. From the beginning of the Saint Monarch's tomb to the small map in the middle, every step was exquisitely made and concealed. It was really exciting. The tomb of a Saint Realm powerhouse wasn't easy to enter. The things inside wasn't easy to take. I don't know who the other party is, but this method is cunning. Little Pig listened to her words, his lips twitched. That's a Saint Realm powerhouse was too deceptive. It could already imagine the other people who had gotten the map running in excitedly, only to be cheated so miserably that they couldn't even cry out for their mothers. Luo Qingtong chuckled as she listened. Squeak, squeak, squeak. A soft and sharp voice rang out. Ants was. What is this? Luo Qingtong instinctively raised her hand to block. Paji. Something soft instantly stuck to her hand. Squeak, squeak, squeak. A small and soft mouse was hugging one of her fingers, squeaking as it moved its 4 limbs in her hand. Its little butt was swaying from side to side. It was so cute. A hamster? Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows and looked at the little thing in her hand. She picked it up. Chapter 1091. Why did such a little thing run over to her place? Moreover, how did it enter the holy court of the Empire of Qin? There were actually hamsters as pets in this other world? Why hadn't she heard of it before? Luo Qingtong was just thinking when she suddenly heard Little Pig exclaim in surprise. Gold-seeking hamster? It looked at the little golden-furred hamster in Luo Qingtong's hand that was intimately and unceasingly rubbing against Luo Qingtong's body, and the corners of its mouth twitched as it spoke. This is a gold-seeking hamster. As it spoke, it bounced with its 4 hooves and jumped in front of the little hamster. Strange, why would it appear here? Little Pig used its little hooves to slap the little hamster in Luo Qingtong's hand. The latter's round and furry body was slapped here and there like a rubber ball, and it instantly became angry. It squeaked as it gave up its love of rubbing against Luo Qingtong and turned to glare angrily at Little Pig. What are you looking at? You don't like your Grandpa Pig? Little Pig looked at the little gold hamster's angry little eyes, and he immediately extended his little hooves to slap it. Speak quickly, where did you come from? His true body was an existence that crushed all beasts, and such a little hamster actually dared to be disrespectful to him. Little Pig's little hooves slapped even more cheerfully. Squeak, squeak, squeak. That little gold hamster became even more furious. Luo Qingtong watched the interaction between the pig and hamster from the side, and she couldn't help but laugh for a while. When she saw the little gold hamster being slapped by Little Pig to the point its fur stood on end, yet it was unable to struggle free from her hand to fight it with its life on the line, she instantly laughed and swatted away Little Pig's little hooves. Alright, stop bullying it. What's this gold-seeking hamster? Luo Qingtong raised her hand to tease the little gold hamster, and the latter seemed to be especially affectionate towards her. When it saw her finger move over, it instantly squeaked as it raised its pair of little claws and moved over. Little Pig was just about to say something when suddenly, the little gold mouse's body violently twitched at this moment. Luo Qingtong withdrew her fingers and looked at the little golden mouse struggling violently in her hand. Its little head was shaking left and right, and it looked like it was in great pain. As it cried out, it looked at Luo Qingtong with its big and cute eyes. The pair of round eyes that occupied almost half of its face were filled with attachment and reluctance to part with Luo Qingtong. But at the same time, there seemed to be some kind of force pulling it away. Luo Qingtong looked at it and frowned slightly. At this moment, Little Pig suddenly barked. Not good. Looking at the little golden mouse's pained appearance, it seemed to be struggling to break free from Luo Qingtong's hand and escape. It suddenly shouted, "Stop it! Don't let it run away." Little Pig's expression was grave. This gold-seeking hamster was raised by someone else, and it's being urged to go back right now. At that time, the existence of the 9 layers exquisite sword and the life and death sword in your body will be exposed. As a fellow beast, Little Pig naturally knew the ability of the gold-seeking hamster. It was an automatic treasure-seeking tool. If this gold-seeking hamster was wild, then so be it. But it was obviously raised by someone. Now that it was being urged to go back, it would definitely expose the fact that Luo Qingtong had many treasures here. Chapter 1092. It was said that a dog's nose was the most sensitive. In fact, this gold-seeking hamster's nose was the most sensitive. However, this gold-seeking hamster was very rare, and ordinary people wouldn't have it. Moreover, they couldn't afford to raise it. Where did it come from? Little Pig didn't have time to think too much and hurriedly had Luo Qingtong stop it. Originally, when Luo Qingtong heard that this little golden hamster was being raised by someone else, she was prepared to let it go. She wouldn't go so far as to snatch someone else's pet. However, when she heard Little Pig's words, her expression suddenly froze. The 9-layer exquisite pagoda and the life and death sword were her biggest secrets. At the same time, they were also her 2 trump cards. They absolutely couldn't be known by others. Although Tian Mingzi had said that there wouldn't be any enemies here, Luo Qingtong didn't want these 2 treasures to be exposed and attract unnecessary trouble. She immediately stretched out her hand. The instant the little golden hamster was about to leave her palm, she pressed it back. The young girl's eyes lit up. Layers and layers of blood-red color spread out from the inside. In an instant, she activated an eye technique. Under the gaze of Luo Qingtong's eyes, an array brand instantly appeared on the little golden hamster's body. It was a beast-taming array. Moreover, it was very profound. It couldn't be set up unless one was a spirit array master in the sage realm or above. At this moment, a spiritual power fluctuation was constantly emitted from the array brand, exerting pressure on the little golden hamster's soul, forcing it to listen to the order and immediately return. The little golden hamster obviously didn't want to leave Luo Qingtong. It was a gold-seeking hamster and naturally yearned for places with treasures. The higher the level of the treasure, the more it liked it. The life and death sword and the 9-layer exquisite pagoda that Luo Qingtong possessed were both rare treasures. Especially the 9-layer exquisite pagoda, which was also the demon-subduing pagoda. The benefits to demonic beasts were obvious. Of course, the little golden hamster didn't want to leave Luo Qingtong. However, that mental energy fluctuation was constantly urging it, causing it to feel extremely painful. At this moment, Luo Qingtong raised her hand and pointed at the core of the array imprint. The mental power in her mind surged out. In an instant, before that mental power fluctuation could react, the array imprint was broken. Creak creak. The little golden mouse was freed in an instant. It jumped onto Luo Qingtong's body and circled around her. It was so happy. From time to time, it would rub its little head against Luo Qingtong and look at her with sparkling eyes, as if it was looking at a big treasure. Outside the courtyard of the Heavenly Demon Group's encampment, Elder Xie's mental power that was controlling the gold-seeking hamster to return was suddenly cut off. His expression instantly changed. This gold-seeking hamster was the treasure of the Celestial Palace. This time, he had brought it out for great use. Nothing must go wrong. Go. Let's go in. That gold-seeking hamster must be with Luo Qingtong. He didn't know what level of treasure the other party had on her that allowed the gold-seeking hamster to break free from his mental power control. If he let the gold-seeking hamster escape, he would be skinned alive when he returned to the sect. Moreover, Luo Qingtong had such a powerful treasure on her. He must get it. Thinking so, Elder Xia immediately lifted his leg and was about to rush towards the courtyard of the Heavenly Demon Group's encampment. However, just as he made his move. Chapter 1093. Elder Xia, no. This is the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin. Seeing that Elder Xia was going to make a move on Luo Qingtong, the two of them were wild with joy. However, they couldn't let Elder Xia make a move here. Elder Xia, this Luo Qingtong is highly valued by the Grand Supreme Dean. The two of them said, if you make a move here, you will definitely alarm him. When he activates the defensive formation of the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin, even if you are a Saint Transcendence, you won't be able to do anything in a short time. What if that Luo Qingtong takes the opportunity to run away? Hearing their words, Elder Xia stopped in his tracks. Then what do you two mean? Elder Xia didn't think that Luo Qingtong could escape from his hands. But it was better to be safe than sorry. What's more, now that the gold-seeking hamster had broken free, it must be by her side. If that little girl saw his intention, she might use the gold-seeking hamster to threaten him. At that time, he would really have to hold back. Thinking like this, he suddenly looked at the two of them and said, in our opinion, we might as well. The two of them said their plan. After discovering that Luo Qingtong had a treasure on her, Su Deheng and Shen Qiuyue planned how to consign Luo Qingtong to eternal damnation. Not only her, but also the Grand Supreme Dean and the others who had been shielding her. Therefore, they stopped Elder Xia and didn't let him make a move here. Otherwise, relying on the defensive formation of the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin, not to mention what would happen to Luo Qingtong, the Grand Supreme Dean and the others would definitely be fine. Not to mention that after the matter became big, it might alarm the Saint Transcendence in the Imperial Palace of the Empire of Qin. At that time, the Grand Supreme Dean and the others would be even more fine. How could Su Deheng and Shen Qiuyue allow such a thing to happen? It was rare for such a good weapon like Elder Xia to come to their door, they must make good use of it. If you want to blame someone, blame Luo Qingtong for being too lucky. He actually had such a treasure in his hands. Humph. They should be thanking her for courting death. As the two of them thought so, they looked at each other with a gloomy expression. Then, they laughed coldly together. Good. We'll do as you say. After listening to the two's suggestions, Elder Xia nodded his head and left. In the courtyard, after they stopped the little gold mouse, Luo Qingtong looked at Little Pig and asked, everything will be fine after we stop it? She furrowed her brows and looked at the little golden mouse that was squatting on her shoulder intimately. It completely treated her as a super treasure and loved her passionately, constantly rubbing against her body to sell its cuteness. Needless to say, her appearance was quite lovable. Luo Qingtong thought. She raised her hand and flicked the little guy's forehead. Then, she watched it fall to the ground with a thud. It took him a while to get up dizzily. The corner of Little Pig's mouth twitched when he saw her actions. This action is so familiar, isn't it? When I tried to act cute and wanted to follow Luo Qingtong, I was treated like this. Thinking of this, Little Pig resentfully glanced at Luo Qingtong. Is this guy a woman or not? Why is he so cold-hearted? Normally, when people see such a cute little animal, shouldn't they take extra care of it? Why does this woman like to bully them? However, Little Pig didn't know that there was a kind of cuteness that made people want to bully them whenever they saw them. It should be fine. Chapter 1094. It guessed that the gold-seeking hamster must have accidentally run to Luo Qingtong's place. In that case, the other party didn't summon it back, so naturally, they wouldn't know what happened to Luo Qingtong. But, you'd better put it into the 9-layered exquisite pagoda to avoid being tracked by its aura. Also, Little Pig said to her, make a fake treasure aura and bury it somewhere, then let people find it later. Lure them away. Otherwise, they will definitely look for this little thing all over the world. Little Pig glanced at the golden-furred hamster squatting on Luo Qingtong's shoulder. The gold-seeking hamster was a rare treasure beast that ordinary people couldn't afford to raise. Moreover, it was very rare. Now that it disappeared, they would definitely search for it. If someone saw it rushing into Luo Qingtong's courtyard, it would be troublesome. Okay. Luo Qingtong nodded. She also thought so. Just in case, it was better to make a fake treasure to lure them away. Luo Qingtong was very familiar with this matter. She casually took out a trashy ring and covered it with a layer of extremely dense energy waves. This energy fluctuation was the combination of the life and death yin-yang sword and the 9 netherworld phoenix ring. It was guaranteed to be able to fool people. Luo Qingtong took the useless ring and went out. At this moment, a group of uninvited guests came to the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin. Your Majesty. In the imperial study, the sage emperor of the Empire of Qin was flipping through all kinds of things copied from Mo Qinshuan's residence. Mo Qinshuan's ambition was obvious. He even made the dragon robe for his coronation in advance. The sage emperor of the Empire of Qin was so angry that his whole body trembled. He flipped the table and ordered the people in the imperial study to teach Mo Qinshuan a lesson. They must find out who the ambitious heavenly doctor behind him was. Ma Qinyi sat on the seat below, listening to the sage emperor's furious outburst. At this moment, an urgent shout came from outside. Then, a guard of the imperial house suddenly walked in from outside and knelt down in the imperial study. Your Majesty, Elder Xia of Celestial Palace requests an audience. Your Majesty, Elder Xia is a saint. The sage emperor of the Empire of Qin's expression changed when he heard the guard's words. The saint that the other party spoke of was not the saint stage powerhouse that ordinary people spoke of. Instead, he was a transcendent saint. Quickly invite him in. Although he didn't know why the outer sect elder of Celestial Palace wanted to see him, the sacred emperor of the Empire of Qin wouldn't neglect him. As the supreme being of the sacred dynasty, he naturally knew about the hidden world. He also knew that Celestial Palace's influence was not weak. What's more, the person who came was a saint, who was on par with the saint transcendence of the royal family of the Empire of Qin. Immediately, he hurriedly asked someone to invite him in. On the other hand, Ma Qinye's elegant and handsome face instantly darkened when he heard that someone from Celestial Palace had come to visit. If he remembered correctly, Su Deheng's wife was from Celestial Palace. He heard that she was an outer sect deacon, so she was very respected in the 4 great sacred dynasties. In the sacred academy of the Empire of Qin, even the Grand Supreme Dean had to show her some respect. Su Deheng's achievements today were mostly thanks to her. Could it be that someone from Celestial Palace came to the Empire of Qin at this time to support her? Thinking of this, Ma Qinye's original intention to leave when he heard that someone was coming was gone. Chapter 1095. Ma Qinyi sat down again and looked at the group of people who came in expressionlessly. Sure enough, Su Deheng and Shen Chuyue were among them. The 2 of them accompanied Elder Xie. When they walked into the imperial study, they saw Mo Qianyi sitting on the left at a glance and immediately smiled. Your Highness. After greeting the Holy Emperor, the 2 looked at Ma Qinyi sarcastically. Especially Su Deheng, who looked at Ma Qinyi with even more sarcasm. The other side helped Luo Qingtong to deal with them. Although the other side really wanted to deal with Mo Qinshuan, it was a fact that he helped Luo Qingtong. This time, they wanted to make him fall to the bottom. The 2's eyes made Ma Qinye's heart sink. At this moment, Elder Xie's voice sounded. Your Majesty, I came here this time to ask the Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin to make a decision for us. He tapped his fingers on the table in front of him and said coldly, I came to the holy capital of the Empire of Qin this time and will leave after a few days. But he raised his head coldly and said, I went to the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin to see Deacon Shen. A student of the Holy Academy, when I wasn't paying attention, lured away the precious beast of the celestial palace, the gold-seeking hamster. The gold-seeking hamster still had the treasures we got along the way. Because the gold-seeking hamster liked those treasures very much, we didn't take them off but let it play with them. Now that the gold-seeking hamster and the treasures are missing, I wanted to break into the Holy Academy and take back the treasures. But I thought that this is the territory of the Empire of Qin and I can't go too far. So I came to ask the Holy Emperor to give us a perfect justice and explanation. As soon as Elder Xie said this, Ma Chunye's face changed completely. The other side really came to make trouble. And the one who was looking for trouble was Luo Qingtong. Thinking of the way Su Deheng and Shen Qiuyue looked at him, Ma Chunye's heart suddenly thumped. How could he not know that the student of the Saint Academy that they were talking about was Luo Qingtong? With this thought, he suddenly stood up and said to the sage emperor of the Empire of Qin, "Father, you must investigate this matter thoroughly. It's impossible for Luo Qingtong to do these things." He cupped his hands and said anxiously, "Father, Su Deheng and Shen Qiuyue have always been at odds with Luo Qingtong because of Su Jinyue and Yu Wenma. Previously, when Imperial younger brother falsely accused Luo Qingtong of cheating at the Elders' Assembly, the two of them were behind it. Father, you must not listen to their words. It's not good for her." As soon as Ma Chunye said this, Su Deheng and Shen Qiuyue sneered. "Your Highness is really interesting. Elder Xie hasn't said who that person is. You can't wait to be so sure that it's Luo Qingtong. You can see what kind of person she is. What's more," Su Deheng sneered, "it's fine if you say that we slandered Luo Qingtong. Elder Xie is a dignified saint. Why would he slander Luo Qingtong? If it wasn't true, who would make things difficult for a little student?" He deliberately emphasized the words, "little student." Hearing this, the sage emperor of the Empire of Qin nodded and said, "That's right. Saint Xie really doesn't have to slander a student. What kind of status did a saint have? How could he make things difficult for a student for no reason? Not to mention telling such a lie." Chapter 1096. The Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin thought so and disagreed with Ma Chunye's words. He didn't know that it was impossible to avenge Su Deheng and Shen Qiuyue. But it was entirely possible to avenge the treasure that even the gold-seeking hamster was excited about. "Come." The Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin said in a deep voice, "Go to the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin and capture the student named Luo Qingtong. Ask her to hand over the treasure of the Celestial Palace and the gold-seeking hamster." "Father." The voice of the Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin sounded. Ma Chunye's voice suddenly sounded. The Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin didn't even pay attention to him. Ma Chunye had no choice but to sit there and wait anxiously. He only hoped that Su Deheng and the others were talking nonsense. In this way, after Luo Qingtong was captured and brought to the palace, he could still exonerate her. At that time, with her identity as the Princess of Great Chu, she would be fine. That's right. And the Grand Dean? He must know about this matter and let him come with the Grand Tutor to support Luo Qingtong. Thinking so, Ma Chunye immediately winked at the people around him. Immediately, some of his trusted aides left the room and went to look for the Grand Principal and the others. Su Deheng and Shen Qiuyue had been paying attention to Ma Chunye's movements. Seeing these movements around him, they suddenly sneered. The smile on their lips was very gloomy and proud. Luo Qingtong was definitely doomed this time. The more the Grand Dean and the others stood up for her, the better. At that time, they could catch all of them in one fell swoop and avenge their previous hatred. Let them help Luo Qingtong. At that time, none of them would be able to escape. The group of people was very calm and composed. Luo Qingtong went back to the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin after burying the fake things. In the courtyard, Yu Qingwei was waiting for Luo Qingtong. Su Xiaoxiao and the others were chatting with her. Ever since the incident at the Elder Conference, the relationship between the Qin Wei group and the Heavenly Demon group had been completely reconciled. Su Xiaoxiao and the others were grateful to Yu Qingwei for bringing the Qin Wei group to help. Although they weren't able to help in the end, they didn't have any prejudice against them. The group of people got along very well. As for Yu Qingwei, Su Xiaoxiao and the others quite liked her. This was especially true for Su Xiaoxiao. As a member of the pharmaceutical department, she liked to interact with Yu Qingwei. The two of them didn't take the usual path when it came to alchemy, so they had a lot to talk about when they were together. But today, Yu Qingwei almost didn't speak. Not only that, she kept anxiously asking Luo Qingtong where she was, asking her to come out because she had something urgent to tell her. Boss has gone out. Su Xiaoxiao and the others looked at her and said. Seeing Yu Qingwei's restless appearance, they seemed to have sensed something and immediately said, Senior Sister Qingwei, why are you looking for boss? If there's anything, you can also tell us. The group said. That's right. Senior Sister Qingwei, is there something that you don't want to talk about? Just say it. That's right. Boss just went out and no one knows when she'll be back. If there's something urgent, you can tell us first. Yu Qingwei looked at them and didn't know what to say. She just received news from Ma Chenyi. The latter thought about it and decided to let Luo Qingtong leave first. The Celestial Palace's people came aggressively and were probably prepared. Even if Luo Qingtong really didn't take their treasure, they wouldn't let it go. Chapter 1097. He had Yu Qingwei send a message to Luo Qingtong in order to not attract attention. After all, in the eyes of many people, even if the two of them had let go of their former enmity, their relationship wouldn't be that good. It was just a pretense. If the Grand Principal sent a message or Ma Chenyi sent it himself, Luo Qingtong would probably be stopped before she could leave the Empire of Qin's holy courtyard. However, who would have thought that Luo Qingtong wasn't in the Empire of Qin's holy courtyard at this time? Unable to tell Luo Qingtong this news, Yu Qingwei couldn't sit still. At this time, Luo Qingtong returned. Senior Sister Qingwei? She saw Yu Qingwei surrounded by Su Xiaoxiao and the others in the pavilion and wanted to ask her what was going on. The latter also anxiously stood up and wanted to tell her what happened in the Empire of Qin's imperial palace. However, at this time, a clamor suddenly sounded from outside. Luo Qingtong? Where's Luo Qingtong? Who's Luo Qingtong? Yu Qingwei's expression suddenly changed when she heard the series of shouts. Damn it, the Sage Emperor sent people. She hurriedly said to Luo Qingtong, Junior Sister Luo, quickly leave. The Celestial Palace's people found the Sage Emperor and said you took their treasure. They're going to capture you now. The situation was urgent, so Yu Qingwei couldn't explain to Luo Qingtong what the Celestial Palace was and why the other party went to the Sage Emperor and said she took their treasure. However, Luo Qingtong immediately understood. The gold-seeking hamster's master came. She narrowed her eyes and said to Little Pig in her mind. Apart from this reason, she couldn't think of any other reason why the other party said she took their treasure. Did they know she had a treasure in her hands? Perhaps the gold-seeking hamster's strange behavior was caused by them. They were nearby at that time. However, the Celestial Palace. Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows. She suddenly remembered that Su Deheng's wife was an external deacon of a mysterious sect. Could it be this Celestial Palace? As she thought of this, she immediately connected the dots. Just as Yu Qingwei's voice fell, a group of people barged in from outside. Miss Yu is wrong. She's not going anywhere today. After hearing Yu Qingwei's words clearly, the commander of the internal guards who had been ordered to capture Luo Qingtong suddenly gestured towards Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong, by order of the Sage Emperor, you are invited to the Imperial Palace of the Empire of Qin. Please don't make things difficult for us. When the commander of the internal guards left the imperial palace, he was warned by Ma Chunye's men to not disrespect Luo Qingtong. Mo Chunxian was already deposed. If there were no accidents, Ma Chunye would be the future ruler of the Empire of Qin. Under such circumstances, the commander of the internal guards was still very willing to do the crown prince a favor. Therefore, he didn't immediately attack Luo Qingtong. However, he didn't know that Ma Chunye's words had actually saved their lives. If they dared to attack Luo Qingtong, they wouldn't end up any better than those people from the Sacred Academy's law enforcement team. Okay, I'll go with you. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes at them, then nodded and walked out with them. Boss! Su Xiaoxiao and the others only just recovered from their shock and almost chased after them. However, this time was different from when they went to the Elders' Guild. The soldiers of the Imperial Guards didn't allow them to follow. What should we do? Chapter 1098. Bastards! What the hell is that celestial palace? Why are they targeting boss? Is there something wrong with their brains? Our boss wants to steal their treasure? How shameless! Yuan, who is so angry that he punches the stone pillar next to him. Boss is the evil Dr. Ghost Eye. What treasure doesn't she have? That underworld venerable in the Black Field can't wait to give her the entire Black Field. Moreover, even if the Black Field doesn't have a treasure, boss won't even bother to steal or snatch it. These people are too much. This is a false accusation. It is a false accusation, Yu Qingwei says. She bites her lip. In the end, she didn't make it in time. She doesn't know if anything will happen to Luo Qingtong. Celestial Palace is a very powerful sect from the hidden world. The one who came this time is their outer sect elder, a saint transcendence expert. He said that Qingtong took his treasure. No one would doubt it. And the Celestial Palace therein is the sect where Su Deheng's wife, Shen Qiuyue, is in. Yuan Hu and the rest instantly understand after hearing Yu Qingwei's words. F***CK. If that's the case, wouldn't it be a piece of cake for them to frame boss? No. Boss is in danger. The group of people immediately react. If that person from Celestial Palace was really called by Shen Qiuyue to deal with Luo Qingtong, then this time, saying that Luo Qingtong took their treasure is completely a conspiracy. No matter whether Luo Qingtong admits it or not, they won't let her off. Not good. The group of people instantly panics. Especially when they think that the outer sect elder from Celestial Palace is actually a saint transcendence expert, they panic even more. Quick! Let's go to the Black Field and inform the people in the Black Field that boss is in danger. As they speak, they stomp their feet and are about to run out. It's useless. Yu Qingwei looked at them and shook her head. Even if Luo Qingtong and the Black Field's evil Dr. Ghost Eye have a good relationship, the latter may not be able to protect her. That's a transcendent saint we're talking about. Unless we can invite someone like Ming Zun from the Black Field, only then would we be able to fight against him. But why would such a person fight against a transcendent saint for Luo Qingtong? Even if evil Dr. Gui Tong personally begs him, I'm afraid it's still impossible. Moreover, behind that elder Xia is the Celestial Palace. Yu Qingwei analyzed seriously with Su Xiaoxiao and the others. She wasn't trying to dampen their enthusiasm and confidence. But it was true. Ordinary people simply wouldn't go against a transcendent saint or even the sect behind the other party for a student like Luo Qingtong. In truth, the sage emperor might have known that Luo Qingtong was innocent. But between a student and a transcendent saint, or even the Celestial Palace, who was more important? Naturally, it was the latter. That's why the sage emperor sent people to capture Luo Qingtong after listening to Elder Xia's side of the story. No, you're wrong. Su Xiaoxiao shook off Yu Qingwei's hand. She looked at her seriously and said word by word, Senior Sister Qingwei, you don't know what will happen if something happens to our boss. Not to mention Elder Xie, Celestial Palace, even the Empire of Qin dynasty will have to use blood to wash away the anger of the Black Field. Or it could be said that the anger of the Black Field's Ming Zun. Those who had seen how much Yi Qianxian cared about Luo Qingtong wouldn't doubt that the Black Field's Ming Zun would go to that extent for her. If something happened to Luo Qingtong, the world would be buried with her. Chapter 1099. Yu Qingwei was startled by her words, but before she could react, Su Xiaoxiao had already waved her hand away. Seeing them leave without looking back, Yu Qingwei's mind kept replaying Su Xiaoxiao's words. If something happened to Luo Qingtong, the Empire of Qin Holy Dynasty and Celestial Palace would have to use blood to wash away the Black Field's anger? How much confidence did she have to be able to say something like that? And Su Xiaoxiao and the others were clearly only people from the Empire of Tianyu. How could they say something like that? What's more, Luo Qingtong was only a young girl from a marquis mansion from a low-level country. Even if Yu Qingwei never judged people based on their appearance or status, she couldn't deny the fact that Luo Qingtong came from a lowly background. The only thing Luo Qingtong could rely on was that she knew evil Dr. Gui Tong and had a relationship with her. But having a relationship didn't mean they would protect her unconditionally. Knowing her didn't mean the Black Field would protect her. Did Su Xiaoxiao and the others think Luo Qingtong was that evil Dr. Gui Tong? Only that evil Dr. Gui Tong would be able to obtain the full protection of the Black Field and the Black Field's underworld venerate in exchange for the destruction of the Celestial Palace and the Empire of Qin Holy Dynasty. Thinking up to here, Yu Qingwei suddenly froze. Luo Qingtong. Evil Dr. Gui Tong? Information about both sides suddenly flashed through her mind uncontrollably. Luo Qingtong came from a low-level country, Dongli country. Evil Dr. Gui Tong rose from a Black Field branch city in Dongli country. Evil Dr. Gui Tong's medical skills were unparalleled, his alchemy skills were superb, and his alchemy skills were top-notch. And when the Qingwei group was dealing with the Heavenly Demon group, a mysterious honorary lead pharmacist suddenly appeared. He obtained the approval of the Grand Master and the Grand Principal of the pharmacist group, defeated her in a challenge, and refined a real pill elixir. The elixir aura contained within the elixir liquid was incomparably dense, and it was no different from a real elixir. Thinking of this, Yu Qingwei immediately sucked in a deep breath. The things that he had never thought of before were instantly dispelled by Su Xiaoxiao's words. Luo Qingtong was the evil Dr. Ghost Eye. This was the evil Dr. Ghost pupil who had caused the Black Field's deep revered to fall in love with her and protect her wholeheartedly. He had even said that no one in the entire True Spill continent would be able to harm her. That was why evil Dr. Gui Tong was so protective of the Luo clan. That was why he destroyed Tianyu's royal family for the Luo clan. It was only when the Qingwei group was dealing with the Heavenly Demon group that the honorary lead disciple of the mystic pharmacy suddenly appeared. If it was the evil Dr. Ghost Eye, then it was no wonder that the Medicine Institute's great teacher and grand principal would make her the honorary chief without any hesitation. Not to mention, no one could surpass her position in the Medicine Institute. How could he surpass it? The other party was already an alchemist. Moreover, his alchemy skills had reached the acme of perfection. Even those old monsters did not dare to say that they could compare to him. As Yu Qingwei thought of this, she realized just how great this matter was. If Luo Qingtong really was the evil Dr. Ghost Eye, then the Celestial Palace and the Empire of Qin's Holy Dynasty would be in deep trouble. Thinking of the anger of the Black Field's deep revered, she fiercely shivered. The Empire of Qin's Imperial Palace. Luo Qingtong was accompanied by the Imperial Palace's internal guards who had come to invite her into the grand discussion hall. In order to express the importance of this matter, the Empire of Qin's Holy Emperor had changed the location of the interrogation from the Imperial Study to the grand discussion hall. The Imperial Palace's inner courtyard was heavily guarded. Wherever they passed, sabers, spears, swords, and halberds would shoot out cold light in all directions. Chapter 1100. Luo Qingtong, you didn't think you'd have such a day, did you? The two men's expressions were cold as they mouthed Luo Qingtong. Their murderous intent towards Luo Qingtong was evident as they opened and closed their mouths. Today, they wanted Luo Qingtong to never be able to walk out of this door. As for Elder Xie, a trace of amazement flashed through his eyes as he looked at the stunning young girl who walked in. He didn't think that this student, whom Su Deheng and Shenqiuyue hated to the bone, would be so stunning. If she could obediently hand over the treasures on her body, it wasn't like he couldn't keep her and play with her by his side. Presumably, she would be very happy to do so. After all, this was an honor that many people couldn't even ask for. Seeing his gaze, the little pig in Luo Qingtong's arms snorted and said, "Hey, woman, that Elder Xie seems to have taken a fancy to you. Oh my God." With a face full of wrinkles, he still wants to learn from others and eat young grass. Hearing its words, Luo Qingtong glanced indifferently at Elder Xie and didn't say anything. On the other side, Ma Chunyi had already stood up. Qingtong. Grand Tutor Jiang and the Grand Principal stood beside him. It was obvious that the two of them had been called over by Ma Chunyi. Luo Qingtong had just learned about Ma Chunyi's painstaking efforts from Yu Qingwei and immediately nodded towards him. It was said that true hearts were revealed in adversity. It was indeed so. When the Celestial Palace made things difficult for her, not only did Ma Chunyi not retreat, but he did his best to help her. It could be said that he didn't let her down for her previous help. She really didn't misjudge him. Qingtong. Ma Chunyi's heart was anxious. He didn't think that Luo Qingtong would appear here. Didn't he ask Yu Qingwei to inform her to leave? Could it be that something went wrong? When the Grand Principal saw Luo Qingtong's arrival, he frowned fiercely and transmitted a message to her, "Luo girl, this matter is not easy to handle. That Elder Xie has the strength of a Saint Transcendence and is considered a powerhouse among the ordinary Saint Transcendents. I think you'd better reveal your identity so that they won't dare to touch you." His expression was dignified. To the Grand Principal naturally hoped that Luo Qingtong's identity wouldn't be exposed so quickly. This way, they would have one more trump card in the Saint Court. But this situation was different. The Celestial Palace was be considered to be a big sect in the hidden world. As elders SSSSSSSB. TSSSS. SSSSSSTSSS have a S. After all, he wasn't a true Saint Transcendence. His was only slightly above the Saint realms. In addition, he had been injured these years, which delayed his advancement. If nothing unexpected happened, his would have been. There was absolutely no possibility of a breakthrough. Under such circumstances, even if he tried his best, he wouldn't be able to stop the other party. Luo Qingtong was invited by him to the Empire of Qin Saint Court. If something happened here, not to mention Ming Zun's anger, even he would feel sorry for Luo Qingtong. No need, Grand Principal. You don't have to say any more. It's too late. Chapter 1101. If the people from Celestial Palace had come specifically to avenge Su Deheng and Shenqiuyue, it would be fine. If she revealed her identity, they would absolutely not dare to make a move. But they had come for the treasures on her body. Even if she revealed her identity, the other party would definitely force her to hand over the little golden mouse. But that gold-seeking mouse had already known the secret of the treasures on her body. In any case, Luo Qingtong would not return it to the people from Celestial Palace. Otherwise, under the investigation of the secret method, the other party would definitely discover the secret of the life and death yin-yang sword and the 9-layered exquisite pagoda. Under such circumstances, the enmity between Luo Qingtong and Elder Xie was set. Rather than letting them get the little golden mouse and leave in fear, which would attract the powerful people from Celestial Palace, it was better to continue to hide her identity and deal with their moves as they came. The best result would be to make Elder Xia and his party stay here completely, so that the people from Celestial Palace would not know what had happened. In this way, the secret of the treasures on her body would not be exposed. Luo Qingtong thought so and narrowed her eyes. She already had a plan in mind. But the specific implementation was still a little difficult. But now, she had no other choice. Luo Qingtong. The Grand Dean did not understand Luo Qingtong's words and did not know what she meant by, "It's too late." When he wanted to ask for more details, Shen Chuyue on the other side could not help but launch an attack. Previously, she had let this woman, who had dealt with her daughter and humiliated her husband, escape. This time, she would like to see how she could escape. Shen Chuyue's eyes glinted coldly. She suddenly stood up with a stern shout. "You abducted my sect's treasured beast and stole my sect's treasures. Quickly hand over all those things and return my sect's treasured beast. Otherwise, don't blame us for being rude to you." Su Deheng was also here. While pretending to comfort Shen Chuyue, he said to Luo Qingtong with a strong sense of righteousness, "Luo Qingtong, I know you have a grudge with my family. You hate my disciple Yu Wenma for abandoning you. Jinhua is not sensible. Because she loves Mo, she offended you many times. But in any case, you can't do such a disgraceful thing to the Celestial Academy when my wife returns home." He raised his voice. "Gold-seeking mouse is the sect's treasured beast of the Celestial Palace. Not everyone can get it. Even if you get it, you can't afford it. What's more, there are all kinds of treasures from Celestial Palace. The Empire of," he said Grand Dean to the Celestial Academy and Holy Dynasty of the Empire Dynasty of the Empire. "Once you provoke the Celestial Palace, I don't know how many lives you have to pay for it. Holy Emperor, please judge clearly." Su Deheng suddenly turned around and bowed to the Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin, who was sitting at the top of the hall. Every word he said was closely related to the fact that Luo Qingtong had a grudge against them, so she deliberately lured away the gold-seeking mouse and caused the Celestial Palace's treasures to be stolen. His words were reasonable, and the people in the hall began to believe him. Even Ma Chenyi couldn't help but glance at Luo Qingtong. He wondered if Su Deheng had some conspiracy that Luo Qingtong found out, so she deliberately lured away the gold-seeking mouse to vent her anger. But he didn't expect that the gold-seeking mouse was the sect's treasured beast of the Celestial Palace, and there were treasures of the Celestial Palace on it. So, no. Chapter 1102. Let's not talk about whether or not Luo Qingtong was such a careless person. She was discovered by Su Deheng and the others when she lured away the gold-seeking hamster. Let's say that the gold-seeking hamster and the sect's treasures were stolen together. Given the grudge between Su Deheng and Luo Qingtong, as well as Elder Xia's strength, how could they not snatch those things back on the spot? Thinking like this, Ma Chenyi's heart suddenly trembled. He immediately realized that it wasn't that Elder Xia and the others didn't want to snatch it, but that they couldn't. It was true that the gold-seeking hamster had gone missing, and it was most likely on Luo Qingtong's body. However, those stolen treasures were most likely all fake. The gold-seeking hamster had gone missing because it had discovered the treasures on Luo Qingtong's body. Elder Xia and the others had deliberately come to complain. They wanted to borrow Imperial Father's hand to force Luo Qingtong to take out the treasures on her body. After all, the Holy Court of the Empire of Qin had a protective formation. Luo Qingtong was among them. If Elder Xia and the others made a move and the Grand Dean defended Luo Qingtong, there was still a possibility that Luo Qingtong would escape. However, it was different in this imperial palace. Luo Qingtong had no one to rely on. As Ma Chenyi thought this, his heart suddenly couldn't help but sink. Luo Qingtong was in danger. Luo Qingtong, what do you have to say? After Su Deheng finished speaking, the Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin, who was sitting on the main seat, raised his head and looked at the young girl standing on the other side of the main hall. That brilliant temperament made him faintly knit his brows when he saw it. It was no wonder that his was so worried about such a peerless beauty. He heard that the other party's strength in the holy court of the Empire of Qin wasn't weak, and her talent was astonishing. However, all of this was nothing compared to the celestial palace. Paying too much attention to her was not a good thing. The holy emperor of the Empire of Qin didn't know that his bewitching medicine had been cured and Mo Chenxuan's plot had been exposed because of Luo Qingtong. He looked at Luo Qingtong with some displeasure and asked with a cold and indifferent face. If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows and said indifferently, since Su Deheng and the rest are so certain, then let them show the evidence. Otherwise, I believe that the sage emperor will uphold justice for me. How could she not see the displeasure in the eyes of the holy emperor of the Empire of Qin? But she didn't care. She did not want to rely on the people of the great Qin sacred dynasty to escape. Elder Xie's strength was too strong, and there was the celestial palace behind him. The people of the Empire of Qin would never want to go against him. Ma Chenyi and the Grand Dean were protecting her. Even if she revealed her identity as the evil Dr. Ghost Eye, no one would believe it. They would only think that they said it deliberately to protect her. So this time, Luo Qingtong could only rely on herself. Humph. Of course we have evidence. However, Luo Qingtong, if we show the evidence, you and your accomplice will be punished severely and be at our disposal. Shen Chuyue said and glanced coldly at the Grand Dean beside Luo Qingtong. Obviously, the accomplice she was talking about was the Grand Dean. That's right. If it weren't for someone helping you, how could you, a little student, lure away the gold-seeking hamsters and take away so many treasures of Elder Xie? Grand Dean, although I know that you are very indulgent and protective of Luo Qingtong, your way of doing things is really disappointing. Chapter 1103. Su Deheng said with a pained expression. Luo Qingtong looked at him and Shen Chuyue, then thought of Su Jinue. She suddenly felt that this family was full of drama. You guys. The Grand Supreme Dean was even more furious. He was indeed against Su Deheng becoming the great teacher of the Soul Institute. He felt that Su Deheng's strength and ability weren't enough for this role. He didn't have any selfish motives. But he didn't expect that he would be viciously blackened today. No wonder they came to the Saint Emperor to complain. He was afraid that they had already made up their mind to not only deal with Luo Qingtong, but also deal with him, right? What a good plan to kill two birds with one stone. The Grand Supreme Dean was so angry that he stomped his feet. He wished he could rush over and kill Su Deheng and the rest, then pull Luo Qingtong away. But in front of the Saint Emperor, he didn't have the right to be presumptuous. Moreover, Su Deheng and the rest had Elder Xie, a transcendent sage, by their side. Just as the Grand Supreme Dean was panting in anger, Luo Qingtong's voice rang out. Okay. As long as you can find evidence, I will plead guilty to the Grand Supreme Dean and let you punish me. But if you can't produce evidence, you have to let us go. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes and looked at Su Deheng and the rest. Okay. Shen Chuyue immediately agreed. She sneered at Luo Qingtong, her heart filled with pride and coldness. She was waiting for Luo Qingtong to say this. At that time, she would get rid of her and the Grand Supreme Dean. This woman probably didn't know, right? The gold-seeking hamster was their celestial palace's precious beast. Naturally, there was a way to raise and control it. Previously, they didn't know what kind of treasure Luo Qingtong had on her that made the gold-seeking hamster so excited that it broke free from Elder Xie's spiritual control. But now that both sides were within reach of each other, no matter how tightly Luo Qingtong hid herself, as long as Elder Xie released his spiritual power, the gold-seeking hamster would obediently listen to his orders. When he crawled out of Luo Qingtong's body, the scene would be wonderful. At that time, Luo Qingtong would not be able to defend herself. With that thought in mind, she looked at Elder Xie proudly and said, "Elder, please make your move. Elder, please take action." Su Deheng, who was beside her, also said respectfully and excitedly. Without the Grand Principal, the Elders' Association would be disbanded. When he returned to the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin, he could easily become the principal with the help of Shenqiuyue. At that time, they would properly deal with the Crown Prince of the Empire of Qin. The two of them sneered. That Elder Xie slowly raised his head and looked at Luo Qingtong. With an unfathomable expression, he said, "You really don't want to plead guilty?" He had the demeanor of an expert. "As long as you hand over the gold-seeking hamster and those treasures, this elder won't look into your crime of theft. I'll even train you by my side. How about it?" He looked at Luo Qingtong's devastatingly beautiful face and said covetously. The young girl's face was absolutely beautiful and her temperament was bewitching. She had an awe-inspiring domineering aura and a calm grace. She was truly a top grade. He couldn't bear to punish this kind of girl. As long as she was willing to hand over the treasures in her hands and the gold-seeking hamster, he promised to treat her well. As for the grudges between Su Deheng and Shenqiuyue and Luo Qingtong, what did it have to do with him? As soon as Elder Xie's words left his mouth, Luo Qingtong smiled. "Elder Xie wants to train me by your side?" Chapter 1104. Unfortunately, I'd rather see Elder Xie being taken in and trained by someone. Why don't we raise the stakes? As Luo Qingtong spoke, the smile on her lips was cold and evil as she looked in Elder Xie's direction. In an instant, the latter was furious. "Bitch! I gave you face, but you don't want it." Elder Xie's face was full of anger. The training he was talking about was naturally not an ordinary training. Luo Qingtong used his own words to reply to him, instantly making him think of that kind of unbearable scene, and his face darkened. "Since you won't shed tears until you see the coffin, then I'll fulfill your wish." He originally thought that the other party was not bad looking. If she was willing to submit to him, the taste of pleasure under his body would definitely be very good. But he didn't think that the other party would be so unappreciative. Since that was the case, there was no need for him to have any tender feelings for the fairer sex. Once the other party was convicted, wouldn't she still fall into his hands? At that time, he would definitely let her know the consequences of what she had just said. As Elder Xie thought of this, he suddenly snorted coldly. He raised his hand and began to use the Celestial Palace's secret technique to control the gold-seeking hamsters. That was the beast-taming technique that the Celestial Palace had specially invited the most powerful array master in the hidden world to create for the gold-seeking hamsters in their sect. Under the activation of the beast-taming brand, as long as he poured his mental strength into it, he would be able to control the other party. This was also specially drawn to prevent the gold-seeking hamsters from being unwilling to return after finding an excellent treasure, or from wanting to escape. The control brand was divided into two types, the main array and the sub-array. When Elder Xie came out, he drew the sub-array in the palm of his hand. The method to control the main array was still in the sect, and was controlled by the sect leader. Therefore, when the gold-seeking hamsters broke free from his mental strength control, he didn't think too much about it. After all, the control of the sub-array was not as strong as the main array, so it wasn't impossible for it to break free. But that would definitely happen when the gold-seeking hamsters found a huge treasure. That kind of treasure would definitely be able to increase the strength of the Celestial Palace sect by more than 10 times. Therefore, Elder Xie could not wait to deal with Luo Qingtong. He did not even care about the dignity of a transcendent saint and an outer elder of Celestial Palace. All for the sake of obtaining the treasures on the girl's body. It was definitely a rare treasure that could allow his strength to soar and contribute greatly to the sect. Just thinking about it made Elder Xie's body tremble with excitement. "Quick!" he pointed out with his finger. "Gold-seeking hamster. Come out." In order to prevent the gold-seeking hamster from being attracted by the aura of the treasure on Luo Qingtong's body and once again resisting his summoning and control like before, Elder Xia exerted a lot of effort in pointing this finger. Almost all of the power in his body was poured into that point, and in an instant, it entered the subformation. However, it was quiet all around. No gold-seeking hamster jumped out of Luo Qingtong's body. Creak creak. In Luo Qingtong's sea of consciousness, the 9-layered exquisite pagoda. The little gold-seeking hamster was happily jumping around in the space of the first floor. It looked like it wasn't affected in the slightest. Creak creak. It raised its hand to fiddle with the huge cocoon of light that Snowball had transformed into. After the latter moved a bit, it hurriedly ran away with its 4 paws. It looked like it was having a lot of fun. Chapter 1105. How is this possible? He repeatedly raised his hand in disbelief. Quick! 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 Gold-seeking hamster, come out! He pointed his finger one after another, using all his strength, but there was still no movement on Luo Qingtong's body. Elder Xia was as tired as a dog, half leaning on the armrest of the chair behind him, gasping for breath. Even with his strength, he had almost exhausted all of his mental strength by activating so many of the formations in succession. He was so angry that he almost cut off his own hand. How is this possible? His face was ferocious as he supported himself on the armrest behind him, glaring at Luo Qingtong and saying, "The beast controlling array given by the sect is absolutely not a problem. Slut, did you do something to it?" Elder Xia didn't believe that he couldn't summon the gold-seeking hamster. That sect's treasure beast must be on Luo Qingtong's body, there was absolutely no doubt about it. But how could he not summon it? Compared to getting the treasure, Elder Xia was more worried that he would lose the gold-seeking hamster. Everyone knew the difference between a fish and a fisherman. As long as there was that gold-seeking hamster, they could get the best treasure. But without that gold-seeking hamster, then even the best treasure couldn't make up for this loss. Slut, what did you do? Elder Xia looked at Luo Qingtong with a murderous gaze. At this time, he couldn't care less about being attracted by her beauty. If there was a problem with that gold-seeking hamster, then even if he got the treasure on Luo Qingtong's body, he would still die when he returned to the sect. Elder Xia, you're joking. Luo Qingtong looked at him indifferently and raised her eyebrows. Didn't you say that you have evidence, so you want to prove that I took your treasure and that gold-seeking hamster? Now that you can't take out the evidence, you say that I did something. If I could do something in front of a transcendent saint like you, then now, it wouldn't be your turn to interrogate me. Luo Qingtong said coldly. Her words caused the people around her to nod slightly. They could clearly see that Luo Qingtong didn't do anything. On the other hand, that Elder Xia clearly said that he would show evidence. In the end, after putting on an act, he said that Luo Qingtong had done something. That was why he couldn't produce any evidence. Was this **King joke? The young girl was only a martial emperor, yet she was able to play tricks in front of him, a transcendent saint. How could it make him so tired that he was sweating profusely, gasping for breath when he spoke, and his tongue was hanging out like a dog? This was simply an insult to their intelligence. This was too much of an act. He was really treating them like fools. In fact, everyone present could more or less guess that Elder Xia and the others had deliberately come to find trouble with Luo Qingtong. But to do it so obviously, he really did not put them in his eyes. This was especially true for the sage emperor of the Empire of Qin. His face instantly turned as black as coal. He was afraid of the celestial palace, so he was willing to give Elder Xia and the others face. But this didn't mean that he was afraid of them. Elder Xia was just an outer sect elder of the celestial palace. It wasn't like the imperial family of the Empire of Qin didn't have any transcendent saints. Chapter 1106. He suppressed the anger in his heart and said to Elder Xie, "Thank you, Saint." He gritted his teeth and reminded him word by word, "She's just a student in the martial emperor realm." "So, you said she did something to you. Are you trying to say that you, a saint, can't even compare to a student in the martial emperor realm? She's not even the strongest in the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin. Luo Qingtong is just a new student in the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin. It's really amazing to have such a cultivation. But you're AF * King Saint. You said she did something to you in front of so many people. Can't you come up with a better excuse?" The veins on the Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin's forehead were bulging. Elder Xie immediately snapped out of his daze after being reminded by Su Chen. But he was very sullen in his heart. The gold-seeking hamster is definitely in Luo Qingtong's possession. There's no doubt about it. He saw the gold-seeking hamster run into Luo Qingtong's courtyard with his own eyes. Damn it, he shouldn't have listened to Su Deheng's words and complained to the Saint Emperor because he was afraid that Luo Qingtong would run away. He wanted to borrow the Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin's hand to kill her. Now, he didn't want to borrow the Saint Emperor's hand to kill her. His old face was about to be completely lost. More importantly, it was the gold-seeking hamster. Luo Qingtong. Elder Xie took a deep breath and looked at the beautiful girl in front of him. "I don't know what method you used to get the gold-seeking hamster out of my control. But that gold-seeking hamster is the precious beast of the Celestial Palace. You must hand it over. And the treasure on you, you must also hand it over. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving this door today." At this moment, Elder Xie had completely given up the idea of finding excuses. So what if he wanted to rob her? With his strength and the influence of the Celestial Palace, he did not believe that anyone could stop him. As Elder Xie spoke, he released his suppressive aura in an instant. "Thank you, Elder. Don't go overboard." Ma Chenyi, Grand Supreme Dean, and the others were already overjoyed when Elder Xie's spell failed. Luo Qingtong was finally all right. However, they did not expect the other party to be so shameless. "You can't slander Luo Qingtong, so now you want to rob her?" These two sentences didn't even need to be pretentious. They were simply rude and unreasonable, revealing the nature of a bandit. The group of people were filled with righteous indignation. Ma Chenyi immediately stood in front of Luo Qingtong and said to the sage emperor of the Empire of Qin, "Imperial Father, you also saw it. The people from the Celestial Palace are deliberately looking for trouble with Luo Qingtong. They are using you. Aren't you angry? Moreover, Luo Qingtong is the princess of Great Chu. Grand Tutor can testify." "Imperial Father, you can also use the national seal to sense it. She has the power of Great Chu. Imperial Father. You can't let anything happen to her." As soon as Ma Chenyi said this, the sage emperor of the Empire of Qin's expression changed slightly. This Luo Qingtong is the princess of Great Chu? Of course, he knew that there was a princess of Great Chu. He even sent Grand Tutor Jiang to the inferior country where she came from to send gifts. However, he did not pay special attention to her name. So, this Luo Qingtong was the newly conferred princess of Great Chu? Ma Chenyi would not joke about this kind of thing. Moreover, the sage emperor of the Empire of Qin could also distinguish through the power of the country's fate. Chapter 1107. Thank you, Holy One. After confirming Luo Qingtong's identity, the Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin's face turned cold. He said in a low voice, "You promised to let her go if you can't produce evidence. I was the witness and heard it with my own ears. I'm afraid I can't let you do anything to her." The holy princess of the Chu dynasty had a very high status. Moreover, the title of Holy Princess was personally conferred by the Chu dynasty's transcendent sage. Although the Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin did not want to offend the Celestial Palace, he did not want to offend the Chu dynasty either. He was the witness of this matter. If he allowed Elder Xie to do anything to Luo Qingtong, he would not be able to answer to the Chu dynasty. Is that so? Elder Xie sneered. He looked at Ma Chunyi and the Grand Supreme Dean, who heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he raised his hand and sucked. Swoosh! Standing behind Elder Xie, Su Diheng and Shen Qiuyue, who were full of joy and pride because of his actions, were sucked into his hands. Pa! Elder Xie's hands suddenly clasped their necks tightly. Elder Xie? Su Diheng and Shen Qiuyue did not expect Elder Xie to do anything to them. They looked at Elder Xie, who was holding them in his hands in horror as they struggled to break free. However, Elder Xie was a transcendent sage. How could they break free? If they had been prepared when Elder Xie attacked, they might have been able to escape. But now, no matter how hard they struggled, they could not escape from Elder Xie's hands. The latter continued to tighten his grip on their necks. That promise wasn't made by this elder. Since the Holy Emperor wants an explanation, then I'll kill them and give you an explanation. But I must do something to Luo Qingtong. Whoever dares to stop me will be going against the Celestial Palace. I hope you know what's best for you, Sacred Emperor. As Elder Xie spoke, he clenched his fists and broke the necks of Su Diheng and Shen Qiuyue. The two of them didn't even make a sound before they died with their eyes wide open. Before he died, his eyes were filled with disbelief. They had never thought that the two of them would be the ones to die after setting up a trap to deal with Luo Qingtong. Bang! Elder Xie waved his hand heavily. With a loud bang, the bodies of Su Diheng and Shen Qiuyue were smashed to the ground. Can I make a move on her now? Elder Xie said with a sinister smile on his face. Get out of my way. Anyone who stands in my way will die. His voice was cold and harsh. With a bang, the aura around him instantly turned into a whirlwind and rushed towards Luo Qingtong. From the whirlwind, a pitch-black hand suddenly reached out and grabbed Luo Qingtong. Come over here. Elder Xie's voice was cold but full of confidence. As a sage transcendence, he couldn't make any mistakes. The other party was only a martial emperor. Qingtong. Run. At this moment, the Grand Dean stood in front of Luo Qingtong. Ma Chunyi had already been pulled away by the commander of the Imperial Guards. The Holy Emperor of the Empire of Qin would never allow his most outstanding son to risk his life. Elder Xie's movements were ruthless. With a loud bang, he struck the Grand Dean. Boom! Their attacks collided in an instant. Chapter 1108. Bang! In the main city of the Black Field of the Empire of Qin, a spirit ship crashed heavily into the anti-airspace barrier above the main city of the Black Field. Before the strong fighters guarding the Black Field on the city walls could shout, a series of urgent voices could be heard from the ship. Quick! Quickly bring us to see the city lord. Evil Dr. Gue Tong is in danger. A group of figures dashed out of the ship. It was Su Xiaoxiao and the others. At this moment, they looked anxious and rushed directly to the strong fighters guarding the Black Field on the city walls of the Black Field. What? Hearing their words, the strong fighters guarding the city walls of the Black Field were shocked. Then, someone immediately flew in front of Su Xiaoxiao and the others. Come with us. As they spoke, each of them took one person, and with a swoosh, the group of people disappeared from the city walls of the Black Region capital. The city lord's residence in the main city of the Black Field. Bei Qing was listening to the reports of his subordinates. His mind was about to be tied up after hearing the things that the other party said. He kept dozing off. He really didn't know what his master was thinking. He brought Feng Yu out to test his strength and left him alone in the main city to deal with things. Shouldn't he be the one to look for a fight? Why did he look for Feng Yu, who looked calm and elegant but was actually sinister and full of evil tricks. This kind of messy matter was suitable for him to deal with. Bei Qing felt a headache coming on. After the city lord of the Black Field reported another power dispute in the main city of the Black Field, he slammed the table and shouted angrily, "Tell them. If there are any disputes in the future, no matter what the reason is, we'll beat them up first. After they calm down, we'll let them deal with it themselves. Hurry up and do it." Bei Qing waved his hand impatiently. What the F***ck is going on? To Bei Qing, there was nothing that couldn't be solved with a fight. If that didn't work, then they would fight. Let's see who dares to bother him with such trivial matters. The Blackfield City Lord's face twitched when he heard the Right Protector's words. He was just about to say something when suddenly, a clamor sounded from outside. The group of Blackfield guards appeared in front of him and Bei Qing with Su Xiaoxiao and the others. City Lord, Right Protector. They claim to be Lord Ghost Eye's followers, saying that Lord Ghost Eye is in danger in the Empire of Qin, and they are asking for our help. Before the group of Blackfield guards could finish their words, Bei Qing had already recognized Su Xiaoxiao and the others. In a flash, she appeared in front of them and grabbed Yuan Hu, who was at the front, and asked, "What's going on? What are you talking about?" Bei Qing had been with Yi Qianxian for a long time, so he naturally knew where Su Xiaoxiao and the others were with Luo Qingtong. Seeing them appear in the Blackfield sub-city, Bei Qing's heart sank. People from Celestial Palace came to the Empire of Qin to make trouble for our boss, saying that she stole their treasure. Our boss has been taken to the Empire of Qin's Imperial Palace. Hurry up and save her. That elder Xie from the Celestial Palace is a transcendent saint. Our boss can't defeat him. Su Xiaoxiao, Yuan Hu, and the others quickly told Bei Qing what had happened, and they were so anxious that their eyes turned red. Bastard! Bei Qing's face fell when he heard this. Summon all the experts of the Saint Realm in the Black Field and follow me to the holy capital of the Empire of Qin. Master is now testing his strength with Feng Yu in that place, and I don't know if he can sense the danger of the evil doctor. Chapter 1109. Bang! In the conference hall of the Imperial Palace of the Empire of Qin. The power of the Grand Supreme Dean and Elder Xie clashed fiercely in mid-air. Rumble. A series of explosions rang out. From the place where the two attacks collided, countless cracks spread out in an instant. Waves of energy spread out from the center of their attacks and spread out in all directions with terrifying power. The conference hall was the place where the Emperor of the Empire of Qin usually dealt with urgent matters. Usually, when things got urgent, it was possible for the ministers to quarrel and fight with each other. Under such circumstances, the materials used to build it were all top-notch. The power of an ordinary saint would not be able to shake it at all. However, at this moment, this magnificent hall was shaking violently under the attacks of the Grand Supreme Dean and Elder Xie. Cracks spread out on the pillars of the hall, forming a spiderweb-like pattern. The entire main hall was emitting teeth-numbing creaking sounds under that powerful attack. A battle between experts who had surpassed the Saint Realm was so terrifying. Under the barrage of attacks, many of the internal guards were sent flying out of the hall. Screams of agony rang out. "Your Majesty, leave quickly." The internal guards of the Imperial House hurriedly escorted the Emperor of the Empire of Qin away. Ma Chenyi wanted to stay, but the Emperor of the Empire of Qin ordered Grand Tutor Jiang to drag him out by force. In an instant, the hall was empty. Only Luo Qingtong, the Grand Supreme Dean, and Elder Xie were left. Humph! How dare you compete with the light of the sun and the moon? Elder Xie sneered. He did not take the Grand Supreme Dean seriously at all. He was merely someone who had surpassed the Saint Realm. In the eyes of ordinary people, he was a rare expert. However, in front of him, he was nothing. If he was not a saint, so what if his strength was above the saint realm? It was just a matter of a few more moves. Thinking of this, he immediately increased the intensity of his attacks. Boom! The Grand Supreme Dean was barely able to take one of his moves. He was injured internally and could not use his full strength. Moreover, Elder Xia's strength was above his. As the strength of the opponent's attack increased, the Grand Supreme Dean immediately felt his own strength being suppressed. An extremely violent force was constantly suppressing him from Elder Xia's side. Knowing that he couldn't hold on for much longer, the Grand Principal gritted his teeth and raised his hand to push Luo Qingtong out. Little child of the evil doctor, leave now. The Grand Principal absolutely could not let anything happen to Luo Qingtong here. Otherwise, not to mention Yi Qinxian's anger, he would not be able to bear it. Even his conscience would feel uneasy for the rest of his life. He had promised that he would take good care of this little girl. Bang! Just as the Grand Principal raised his hand to push Luo Qingtong, his attack power was also dispersed by Elder Xia's attack. The latter's power was like a torrential river, sweeping over like raging waves. You want to leave? Dream on. All of you, stay here. Elder Xia's face was ferocious. His stay naturally referred to the Grand Dean's life and Luo Qingtong's people. Rumble. In mid-air, Elder Xia's power swept over like a violent storm. The spiritual energy giant hand, which was as tall as several people, fiercely grabbed at Luo Qingtong and the Grand Supreme Dean. Go! The Grand Supreme Dean's hand was about to slap Luo Qingtong's body and send her out. Chapter 11:10. The young girl held his hand. Grand Principal. Luo Qingtong didn't even look at the raging waves of energy behind the Grand Principal that were as tall as several people. The large hand made of spiritual energy that had been standing on top of the mountain for a long time didn't attract the slightest bit of her attention. Do you still remember what I said to you when we first met? The young girl looked at him, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Evil, domineering, enchanting, confident. Evil Dr. Doll. The Grand Principal's hand was grabbed by Luo Qingtong. He felt the raging waves of energy coming from behind him, and his heart instantly burned with anxiety. Oh my God! What kind of situation is this? You doll, don't reminisce about old times. If you continue reminiscing about old times, the two of us will die. How could the Grand Principal not remember what Luo Qingtong said to him when they first met? It was this evil Dr. Doll who exposed his internal injuries. That was why he was itching to kidnap Luo Qingtong to the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin. In the end, this little girl had given the heaven-grade student admission notice that he had given to the Sky Hall of the main courtyard directly to Chu Lingfeng, that blockhead. He had made himself happy for nothing. Later on, in order to persuade her to come to the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin, he had even sent out a bunch of purple-grade heaven-grade student admission notices. God knows how many times the Elders Guild had used this against him because of this matter. But now wasn't the time to talk about this. Little doll, hurry up and leave. Feeling that the energy behind him was getting closer and closer, the Grand Principal couldn't care less anymore. Unable to break free from Luo Qingtong's hand, he could only directly push her away like this. However, before he could do anything, Luo Qingtong's voice rang out again. At that time, I said that I couldn't treat your injuries. But now, we can try. As Luo Qingtong spoke, the blood-red light in her eyes suddenly flickered. Ocular technique, activate. With Luo Qingtong's current strength, it was impossible for her to completely heal the Grand Principal's injuries and eliminate the raging waves of energy in his body. But she could temporarily open up a path in the midst of those waves of energy, allowing the Grand Principal's energy to pass through. Under such circumstances, she could completely allow the Grand Principal to temporarily recover his strength and not be limited to the suppression of that one injury. Boom! Luo Qingtong's energy flowed through the wrist of the Grand Principal and blasted into his body. "Follow me." Luo Qingtong's voice rang. "Evil Doctor Baby." However, something that astonished him happened. Boom boom boom. Luo Qingtong's energy swept through the area where the raging waves of energy were swirling without any obstruction. Her energy accurately passed through the gaps in those waves of energy and passed through the area where the waves of energy were swirling without alarming those waves of energy. The Grand Principal, who was controlling the energy in his body, was stunned. Chapter 11:11. His power and aura followed Luo Qingtong's power and aura, crossing the place where the violent power was. Boom! 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 The channel that had not been opened for many years was opened. In an instant, the aura around the Grand Supreme Dean skyrocketed. Feeling that he had recovered his peak strength, the Grand Supreme Dean was so happy that he couldn't control himself. It had been too long. How long had it been since he had felt so full of power? It was really refreshing. The Grand Supreme Dean's aura skyrocketed. Before he could say anything to Luo Qingtong, rumble. Behind him, Elder Xie's attack arrived. Bang! The Grand Supreme Dean waved his hand fiercely. Boom! The power of countless meridians in his body surged out in an instant and clashed fiercely with the power that Elder Xie had unleashed. Rumble! In an instant, Elder Xie's attack, which he thought was foolproof, was blocked by the Grand Supreme Dean. What's more, it was bombarded by the aftermath of the Grand Supreme Dean's attack. It formed a fan-shaped attack wave and retreated back to Elder Xie. Elder Xie was shocked and did not have time to defend. With a bang, he was blasted back several steps by the force and almost sat on the ground awkwardly. Bastard! Elder Xie was infuriated. He had been careless just now. He thought that there was no problem in the end, so he removed the power defense around his body. Otherwise, the Grand Supreme Dean's attack would not have hurt him. Go, go, go! Little Luo, let's go! After the Grand Supreme Dean blasted him back, he pulled Luo Qingtong and was about to run. This was the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin, which was not conducive to the battle between him and Elder Xie. Everything would be fine when they returned to the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin. The people of the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin did not protect Luo Qingtong, but he would. Go! Let's go back to the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin. Once they returned to the Sacred Institute of the Empire of Qin and activated the array formation, everything would be fine. The Empire of Qin Saint Academy's protective array could only be broken by a Saint Realm Master. Elder Xie, this shameless person, definitely had no choice. However, if he could think of it, so could Elder Xie. Stop them. Su Deheng and Shen Chuyue's idea was not without benefits. Sure enough, the Grand Dean did his best to protect Luo Qingtong. Fortunately, this wasn't the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to do anything to her. But now, Elder Xie sneered. Following his words, several figures instantly appeared at the entrance of the hall. He was the outer disciple of Celestial Palace who came to the Empire of Qin with Elder Xie. The Grand Principal had forgotten about their existence. Elder Xie's path was blocked. Elder Xie stomped his foot hard on the ground and stopped himself from retreating. In the next second, he appeared beside Luo Qingtong. Bitch, come here. Elder Xie waved his palm at the Grand Principal, while his other hand formed a bow and reached out to grab Luo Qingtong. With the help of the outer disciple of Celestial Palace, the Grand Principal had no time to deal with Luo Qingtong. Little girl. Elder Xie's claw was about to grab Luo Qingtong, and the Grand Principal's pupils shrank. Just as Elder Xie's claw was about to touch Luo Qingtong, buzz, Luo Qingtong's body suddenly lit up with rays of light. Chapter 11-12. Rumble. The entire imperial palace of the Empire of Qin trembled. What? What's going on? The sacred emperor of the Empire of Qin, who was escorted out of the imperial palace by the imperial palace's internal guards, looked at the scene above the imperial palace in shock. Wisps of ferocious dragon-shaped auras were surging and gathering in his direction. In the holy capital of the Empire of Qin, the sound of a dragon's roar resonated from the ancestral imperial ancestral temple, which was located far away from the imperial palace. A huge, invisible dragon suddenly appeared on top of the ancestral imperial temple and roared at the sky. Countless streams of the imperial providence of the Empire of Qin and the powerful energy stored in the ancestral imperial temple surged out and appeared above the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin. Buzz! Streams of dragon-shaped aura flew up one after another. The entire imperial palace of the Empire of Qin was like a giant beast that had been awakened by someone. Powerful energy surged out and filled every corner of the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin. The sacred emperor of the Empire of Qin and the others watched this scene with their mouths agape, the Empire Protecting Array. The Empire Protecting Array, which had been built by the founding saint to protect the imperial family of the Empire of Qin and protect the imperial family of the Empire of Qin, had been activated at this time. In order to activate such a formation, the Saint Emperor had to personally use his bloodline and the power of the nation's destiny to activate it. This was one of the last barriers in the war between the Empire of Qin. It was so powerful that the guarding array of the Sacred Academy couldn't compare to it. At the very least, it would take an army of thousands of men and countless Saint Realm experts to break through. To break through this array with one's own strength, one would need to be at least at the nascent Venerable Realm. What everyone was surprised about was how this array formation could be activated under such circumstances. After all, the Sacred Emperor was still here. He didn't go to the heavenly altar and perform the heavenly ritual. He didn't use his own bloodline and imperial providence to communicate with the ancestral imperial temple to activate this array. The sacred emperor of the Empire of Qin was also shocked speechless. He couldn't explain what was happening in front of him. How could an array left behind by their ancestors be activated for no reason? Moreover, judging from the direction of the aura, it was coming from the conference hall. After all, Elder Xie, the Grand Dean, and Luo Qingtong were still inside. What was going on? While the crowd outside was shocked, Elder Xie was also shocked beyond words in the great conference hall. How is this possible? Elder Xie himself couldn't even count how many times he had called out. It was impossible. He was in shock on the imperial providence. In front, Luo Qingtong was dressed in red. She was enchanting and charming. The young girl's body was enveloped in a bright silver light barrier. Countless dragon-shaped auras were entrenched around her, completely nullifying the power of his claw attack. Luo Qingtong's long hair fluttered in the wind, and the lock of hair on her forehead danced in the wind. The black shadow floated in her blood-red eyes. It made the girl look like a goddess of the 9 heavens. She looked like a devilish ghost. Her devilish charm and alluring aura was so mesmerizing that people couldn't take their eyes off her. There was a type of person who could amaze time just by standing there. Chapter 11-13. Luo Qingtong raised her hand and stroked Little Pig in her arms. Little Pig had already turned a blind eye to her perverted behavior and was numb to it. To think that it had been so anxious just now, thinking that this woman was doomed this time. Damn it, a Saint Transcendence had made his move. Little Pig had used up most of his accumulated strength when he was dealing with that Silver Sword Elder. He couldn't transform into his true form. Who would have thought that this woman already had a plan in mind? When she was arguing with Elder Xie, she had already activated her eye technique to secretly observe and crack the nation-protecting array above the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin. Now that she was protected by this array, Elder Xie wouldn't be able to hurt her. Elder Xie should be glad that she was only a martial emperor. Even if she used all her strength, she could only activate a little bit of the nation-protecting array's power to protect herself. Moreover, she could only activate its defensive function. Otherwise, if Luo Qingtong was a little stronger, she could control the entire nation-protecting array in a matter of minutes. When she activated it, he didn't want to die too miserably. The Grand Supreme Dean also looked at Luo Qingtong with a dumbfounded expression. Little doll, he raised his finger and pointed at Luo Qingtong and the bright silver array covering her body. He was speechless for a long time. A protective shield that could block the attack of a Saint Transcendence, damn it, how strong was its defensive power? Even if Luo Qingtong had such a treasure, she shouldn't have enough strength to activate it, right? Moreover, why did the dragon-shaped power swimming around Luo Qingtong look so familiar? While the Grand Supreme Dean was still in a daze, Elder Xie had already recovered from the shock and continued to attack in disbelief. Impossible! You can't block my attack! He shouted harshly. With a ping sound, the sleeves of his robe shook. An extremely violent power surged out. Under the control of his aura, all the heaven and earth spiritual qi in the great assembly hall was sucked dry, forming the shape of a huge mountain above his head. 5 Great Mountain Suppression. One after another, huge mountains of spiritual energy appeared, and then heavily pressed down on Luo Qingtong. The latter narrowed his eyes and looked at him with a pleased expression. As long as Luo Qingtong was in the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin, under the protection of the Empire Protection Array, she would never be harmed. Elder Xie and the others thought that once they lured her away from the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin, she would have no one to rely on. What she didn't know was that wherever her pair of blood-red eyes passed, there would be something to rely on. Boom boom boom. As soon as the 5 mountains came crashing down, the entire conference hall began to tremble, and a series of deep gullies appeared on the ground. Luo Qingtong was still unscathed. The dragon-shaped aura around her surged, weakening the violent aura layer by layer until it finally disappeared into nothingness. Elder Xie's face turned ugly as he continued to attack. Universe Blazing Sun Palm. Star Seal. Heaven Tyrant Fist. He launched one attack after another, but he couldn't even touch a hair on Luo Qingtong's body. The veins on Elder Xie's forehead were exposed, and his face was as ferocious as a ghost. Seeing this scene, the Grand Supreme Dean at the side immediately laughed out loud. Chapter 11-14. The Grand Supreme Dean had already recognized the dragon-shaped aura surrounding Luo Qingtong. It was the power of the Nation Protection Array. Luo Qingtong was actually protected by the Nation Protection Array. No wonder Elder Xie couldn't do anything to her. Although he didn't know how Luo Qingtong did it, the Grand Supreme Dean felt very happy when he saw this scene in front of him. It was like drinking a bucket of ice water on a hot day. The veins on Elder Xie's forehead bulged one by one, and he looked like he was about to explode. His malicious gaze wandered around Luo Qingtong's body. He wanted to find out where her defensive barrier came from. How could it resist so many of his attacks? Even if it was Luo Qingtong's treasure, she didn't have enough power to activate it. Not to mention that he had attacked her so many times. If it was her treasure, she wouldn't have been able to withstand it by herself. Suddenly, Elder Xie's gaze suddenly froze. His cold, snake-like gaze stopped on the dragon-shaped aura swimming around Luo Qingtong's body. He didn't pay much attention to it just now, but this dragon-shaped aura, in an instant, Elder Xie seemed to have thought of something, and the veins on his forehead bulged fiercely. Bang! He waved his sleeve heavily, and a violent force fiercely bombarded the ground. Good. 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 He laughed sinisterly and said, "Good," 3 times in a row. The veins on his forehead bulged more and more. It's good to have a good face. Bitch, I underestimated you. Elder Xie had already recognized that this dragon-shaped aura was clearly the power of providence of the imperial family of the Empire of Qin. The imperial family of the Empire of Qin was protecting Luo Qingtong. Bastard! The anger in his heart was bursting. He had clearly warned the imperial family of the Empire of Qin not to interfere in this matter. He didn't expect that they would still make a move. They actually used the nation protection array of the Empire of Qin to protect Luo Qingtong. No wonder he couldn't beat them. Elder Xie, who thought he had found the crux of the problem and the reason, instantly flew up. I'll go tell the imperial family of the Empire of Qin to remove this array, or I'll kill the crown prince. Let's see what else you can be arrogant about. Elder Xie said coldly, and with a swish, he disappeared from the hall. Not good. The Grand Supreme Dean, who was laughing loudly, suddenly stopped and rushed out. Bastard, he really didn't want to lose face as a transcendent saint. In order to deal with Luo Qingtong, he even wanted to go against the imperial family of the Empire of Qin? And even attack the crown prince? He was simply crazy. In fact, Elder Xie was almost crazy. He would never let Luo Qingtong go. It would be fine if it was only for the treasures in the other party's possession. At worst, he could just leave first and wait for a suitable opportunity to make a move against the other party. But now, that gold-seeking hamster was in Luo Qingtong's body. This time, he brought the gold-seeking hamster out for great use. And it would be used soon. Under such circumstances, who knew how long Luo Qingtong would stay in the imperial family of the Empire of Qin? Even if she left the imperial family of the Empire of Qin, there was still the Celestial Institute of the Empire of Qin. He couldn't wait that long. Today, he would capture Luo Qingtong in his hands. Even if he might provoke the saint transcendence of the imperial family of the Empire of Qin, it didn't matter. Anyway, he had the Celestial Palace behind him. What could they do to him? Elder Xie sneered. Swish! His figure suddenly appeared outside the conference hall. Chapter 11:15. Humph! Elder Xie snorted coldly. Then, he waved his sleeve. In an instant, the few Imperial House internal guards who were holding Mo Chenai back were sent flying with blood gushing out of their mouths. Elder Xie raised his hand and waved. In an instant, Mo Chenai's body flew towards him uncontrollably. Your Highness! Seeing this, Grand Tutor Jiang, who was standing beside Ma Chenyi, immediately attacked. However, as soon as he attacked, he was slapped back by Elder Xie. Grand Tutor Jiang was not as strong as the Grand Dean. Seeing this, the Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin was shocked and then angry. Elder Xie, what is the meaning of this? It was fine that the other party attacked Luo Qingtong, but the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin did not intervene. Why did he suddenly attack Humph! Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin. The imperial palace of the Empire of Qin deliberately went against the celestial palace, but it doesn't matter. I'll capture your son now. You must immediately deactivate the defensive matrix in the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin. Otherwise, I'll kill him. Elder Xie's voice rang out. In an instant, the Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin felt even more wrong than Do-yi. What did he mean by the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin deliberately went against the celestial palace? If he really wanted to go against the celestial palace, he would have asked the elder ancestor for help. What's more, he wasn't the one who activated the nation-protecting magical array. How could he possibly deactivate it? The Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin felt his vision go dark, and he was about to vomit blood. Seeing that Ma Chenyi was about to fall into Elder Xie's hands, he quickly shouted, Elder Xie, don't do anything stupid. The imperial palace of the Empire of Qin really did not intervene in this matter. How did the nation-protecting formation activate? I really don't know. But how could Elder Xie believe him? Humph. The Empire of Qin can only be activated by the power of the royal bloodline of the Qin Empire and the Qi meridian of the nation. How do you not know how to activate it? The Sage Emperor of the Empire of Qin. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old kid? Since you don't care about your only son, then I'll kill him. Let's see if Luo Qingtong can still be a coward. Elder Xie said coldly. He remembered clearly that the Crown Prince had been protecting Luo Qingtong ever since he came in to complain to the Saint Emperor in the main hall. He even used all sorts of methods to find support for the other party. He didn't believe that Luo Qingtong would still hide in her turtle shell when he was about to die. As he thought about this, his 5 claws formed into a bow and shot towards Ma Chenye's throat. Spirit energy surged from the palm. Once Ma Chenye hit the palm of his hand, his collarbone would be torn apart and he would die on the spot. Just like Su Deheng and Shen Qiuyue, he would die miserably. Bastard! Seeing that Elder Xie was about to kill, the Sage Emperor of the Empire of Qin was anxious and angry. He suddenly used the secret method passed down by the royal family to communicate with the Sage Transcendence who was in seclusion, hoping that the Sage Transcendence could come out and stop the other party. But the Sage Transcendence was in seclusion. It would take a few seconds for him to wake up. It was too late. Luo Qingtong was going to kill his best son. How did she trigger the great Qin imperial family's nation-protecting formation? The Sage Emperor of the Empire of Qin was really angry. At this moment, Luo Qingtong suddenly stepped out of the hall. Bang! She transferred the bright silver shield from her body to Ma Chenye. Then she suddenly jumped up and rushed out of the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin. Chapter 11:16. Bang! Elder Xie's claw landed on Ma Chenye's throat, but the dragon-shaped aura around him dissipated it. However, Elder Xie wasn't angry. Seeing Luo Qingtong's figure dashing out, he laughed loudly. His figure suddenly dashed out and chased after her. Bitch, you really came out of that tortoise shell. Elder Xie's eyes flashed with a cold light. He knew that he could force this woman out by attacking the Crown Prince. Without the protection of the nation-protecting array formation, let's see how that woman can escape from my grasp. As he thought about it, he quickly chased after Luo Qingtong. Ahem. After Elder Xie left, Mo Chenye's body fell heavily on the ground. He coughed violently. At this moment, a loud explosion sounded from the depths of the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin. In the next second, a figure rushed out, giving off a terrifying aura as he appeared before Great Qin's Holy Emperor and the others. What's going on? The imperial palace of the Empire of Qin frowned and looked at the mess around them. There were traces of the nation-protecting array being activated. What's going on? Did someone attack the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin? Great-grandfather. Ma Chenye hurriedly covered his throat and knelt in front of the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin. He begged, Great-grandfather, please save Qingtong. Mo Chenye's words rang out, and before that transcendent saint could say anything, the great Qin sage emperor had already begun to berate him. Shut up. Don't you think she's done enough harm to you? If she hadn't provoked the people from the celestial palace, the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin wouldn't have ended up like this. You almost died in the hands of that Elder Xie. How dare you ask the ancestor to save her? Do you know what it means for the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin to go against the celestial palace? The imperial palace of the Empire of Qin looked at Ma Chenye with disappointment. Father. Ma Chenye stood up, covering his neck. Luo Qingtong has helped us a lot. I didn't tell you before because I was afraid that you wouldn't be worried. It was Luo Qingtong who found out about Mo Chenxian and the celestial doctor. She also gave me the antidote to the bewitching drug you took. Father, if it weren't for Luo Qingtong, the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin would have fallen into Mo Chenxian and the celestial doctor's greedy wolf. It's reasonable for us to help her. Ma Chenyi had been wanting to talk to the Emperor of the Empire of Qin about this, but he hadn't found a chance. Now he told him everything. Hearing this, the Emperor of the Empire of Qin suddenly frowned. Those things were done by Luo Qingtong. But even if she did, it wasn't worth it for them to go against the Celestial Palace. Elder Xie obviously wouldn't give up Luo Qingtong. In such a case, if they saved Luo Qingtong, it was equivalent to going against the Celestial Palace behind Elder Xie. Luo Qingtong wasn't worth the risk. Well, don't talk about it. Even so, I've already defended her before. It was Elder Xie who refused to give up. The Imperial Palace of the Empire of Qin can't do anything. Chapter 11:17. The Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin said coldly. Father. Ma Chenye's heart sank when he heard the Saint Emperor's refusal. Before he could say anything else, the Saint Master of the Empire of Qin waved his hand and said, "The Saint Emperor is right. The imperial family of the Empire of Qin shouldn't interfere in this matter. Let's leave it at that." Since the other party had left the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin, it had nothing to do with them anymore. The Saint Master of the Empire of Qin naturally wouldn't chase after Luo Qingtong to save her. It would be unwise to go against Elder Xie and the Celestial Palace. The Transcendent Saint, who had already guessed the gist of the situation from the conversation between Mo Chenyi and the Great Qin Sage Emperor, made a decision. Great-grandfather. Ma Chenye's heart sank when he heard the Saint Master of Qin's words. If even his great-grandfather refused to help, wouldn't Luo Qingtong be doomed? How could she deal with Elder Xie? Without the Empire protecting array of the Imperial Palace of the Empire of Qin, how could she escape from the Saint Master of Qin with her martial emperor strength? Ma Chenye's heart was filled with grief as he thought about it. He sat down on the ground, not knowing what to do to save Luo Qingtong. At this moment, the Grand Principal who had lost sight of Luo Qingtong returned. He was furious when he saw this scene and said coldly, "Saint Emperor, Saint, you think this is the best for the Empire of Qin, but you don't know that standing aside like this is a disaster for the Empire of Qin. Ma Chenyi has created a good situation for you, but you've ruined it all. Just stay here and do nothing. If anything happens to Luo Qingtong, let me tell you, the imperial family of the Empire of Qin will be destroyed in an instant." Celestial Palace? The Celestial Palace is nothing compared to that fiend. The Grand Supreme Dean was truly furious. If it was any other time, he definitely wouldn't point at the Sage Emperor of the Empire of Qin and curse in front of the Transcendent Saints. But today, he really couldn't hold back anymore. If the Sacred Emperor of the Empire of Qin had not insisted on seeking justice for the people of the Celestial Palace and brought Luo Qingtong to the Imperial Palace of the Empire of Qin, nothing would have happened to Luo Qingtong in the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin. They wanted to curry favor with Elder Xie and the Celestial Palace behind him, but they did not know that compared to Yi Qianxian, Elder Xie and the Celestial Palace were nothing. Let's see how the imperial family of the Empire of Qin will explain themselves when that demon comes. If Luo Qingtong was lucky enough to be fine, then everything would be fine. But if something happened to her, perhaps the entire imperial family of the Empire of Qin would be buried with her. That would be digging their own graves. The Grand Supreme Dean didn't even bother to pay attention to them. He directly pulled Ma Chenyi and was about to leave. At this moment, boom! A huge roar sounded. In an instant, the entire holy capital of the Empire of Qin was filled with sharp alarms. It seemed that some defensive barriers had been triggered. In an instant, the sharp alarms resounded through the entire holy capital of the Empire of Qin. What's going on? Everyone in the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin raised their heads and looked up at the sky. The sacred emperor of the Empire of Qin was originally annoyed by the Grand Supreme Dean's attitude and tone. He was about to scold him. But when he heard the alarms, he immediately raised his head and looked up. With one look, he instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. Countless spiritual boats and spaceships appeared outside the holy capital of the Empire of Qin. The pitch-black hull of the ship, which was decorated with dark domain totems, burned his eyes. Chapter 11:18. Swish! Swish! One by one, figures flew out from the spirit ships. Hiss! At the sight of these figures, the people in the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin gasped even louder. Saint Realm! All of them were Saint Realm experts. Everyone in the holy capital of the Empire of Qin was shocked when they saw the figures who were all wearing black field uniforms and emitting powerful and terrifying auras. What was going on? Is Black Field going to attack the Empire of Qin? So many Saint Realm experts had been dispatched. While everyone was still in shock, Bei Qing had already appeared in the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin with the city governor of the Black Field and several other experts who had surpassed the Sage Realm. Where's Luo Qingtong? Bei Qing's face was filled with anxiety. He scanned the palace with his spiritual will and sensed the traces of the battle between transcendent saints. He did not sense Luo Qingtong's aura and his heart sank. Could something have happened to the evil doctor? At the thought of this, Bei Qing couldn't help but release the aura around her. In an instant, the people from the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin were so suppressed that their faces turned pale. If it weren't for the transcendent saint from the Empire of Qin's imperial family protecting them in time, they would have been forced to kneel in a sorry state. If a protector of the Black Field was already this strong, then how strong would Ming Zun himself be in the Black Field? The group looked at Bei Qing and the city lord of the Black Field main city and the others and could not help but feel shocked. They all knew that Black Field was very strong, but they didn't expect them to be this strong. In fact, the city lord hadn't even made a move yet. The Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin was also shocked. He didn't know that the Black Field's people would come in such an aggressive manner and ask about Luo Qingtong as soon as they arrived. Judging from the other party's anxiousness, they weren't here to cause trouble. Were they here to help Luo Qingtong? If that was the case, the sacred emperor of the Empire of Qin instantly paled. Beside him, Ma Chunyi didn't think too much about it. After Bei Qing finished speaking, he suddenly stepped forward and even rushed in front of the Grand Dean. He said to Bei Qing and the others anxiously, "Quick! Hurry up and save Qingtong. She lured Elder Xia away. The other party was a transcendent saint, she definitely wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Go and find her." As he spoke, he raised his hand and pointed in the direction that Luo Qingtong and Elder Xia had left. All right. Bei Qing and the others didn't have the time to deal with the Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin. Once they found the evil doctor and he was safe and sound, they would slowly settle the score with him. The Saint Emperor of the Empire of Qin and the others had better pray that the evil doctor was safe and sound, otherwise, their master's anger couldn't be quenched even if the whole world raged. In the 100,000 mountain range in the holy capital of the Empire of Qin, Luo Qingtong's figure flitted through the mountain range at lightning speed. As soon as she left the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin, she immediately headed towards the 100,000 mountain range. Elder Xia had already threatened the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin once. There was no guarantee that he wouldn't do it again. If Luo Qingtong continued to stay in the holy capital of the Empire of Qin, even if she could avoid being detected by Elder Xia's aura, her whereabouts would still be exposed when the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin activated the holy capital's magic array. Luo Qingtong wouldn't put her safety in the hands of others. Moreover, the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin wouldn't protect her at all. Therefore, the 100,000 mountain range was the safest place for her. She had the eye technique, so she wasn't afraid of encountering sudden dangers in this dangerous mountain range. Chapter 11:19. Boom! 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 Elder Xia was hot on Luo Qingtong's tail. He waved his hand, one attack after another. The surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was boiling. Under the control of his strength, it formed a wall of spiritual energy in an instant and enveloped Luo Qingtong. If Luo Qingtong had not advanced to the martial emperor realm, this cage formed by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth might have caused her trouble. After all, she had almost been caught by Yi Qianxian several times in the past. But now, buzz! Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed with a bloody light. She activated her pupil technique in her eyes. In an instant, she could clearly see the surging and condensing of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around her. The aura around her shook. The aura of the martial emperor realm gushed out and condensed around her. She seized the opportunity to poke at the core of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth condensed by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. In an instant, the speed at which the spiritual energy of heaven and earth condensed suddenly slowed down. Taking advantage of this pause, Luo Qingtong rushed out of the cage formed by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in an instant. Bang! Behind her, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth did not catch the target and shattered into pieces. Bastard! Elder Xia stomped his feet in anger. This woman was more slippery than a loach. Elder Xia had thought that after he had forced Luo Qingtong out of the imperial palace of the Empire of Qin, the girl would be at his mercy. After all, was there any suspense between a saint transcendence and a martial emperor realm? However, this woman just had to find a way to escape from his hands again and again. Obviously, with her strength, it was impossible for her to shake his technique. Elder Xia did not know what the problem was. But it did not matter. Elder Xia sneered as he watched the spiritual energy of Luo Qingtong explode every time the spiritual energy of heaven and earth exploded. With the spiritual energy, he was not afraid that this woman could escape from his hands. He wanted to see how many times she could escape from his hands with her martial emperor realm strength and how many times she could resist his technique. He was waiting for her to be exhausted. In Luo Qingtong's arms, Little Pig looked at her with a worried face and said, "Woman, this is really troublesome. We can't get rid of this old chrysanthemum. His spiritual energy of heaven and earth is on your body. It's fine if he's a martial emperor realm saint, he can't hide. However, he's a saint transcendence and earth's spiritual energy of heaven and earth. This time, you can't escape." This time, Little Pig was really anxious. The previous few times when Luo Qingtong was in danger, even if the girl could not escape in the end, it had something to rely on. But this time, it had only revealed its true form once, and killed that silver sword sect elder. It's over, it's over. Is this woman really going to die here this time? Is she going to be caught by this old man with a face full of wrinkles? Thinking of how Elder Xia was drooling over Luo Qingtong, who knew what he would do to her if he caught her. At that time. Why are you panicking? Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. In her previous life, she had been hunted down countless times. Before she became strong, she had always escaped from death. She knew very well that she had to remain calm in this kind of situation. But this time, it was indeed troublesome. Luo Qingtong sensed the spiritual energy of the surroundings. Chapter 11:20. Under the control of Elder Xia's spiritual energy, she simply couldn't absorb any energy to replenish her body's aura. If this continued, the aura in her body would inevitably be exhausted. At that time, even if she had the eye technique, without enough strength, she still wouldn't be able to dodge Elder Xia's attack. What should she do? What should she do? Luo Qingtong's mind was spinning rapidly. At the same time, in a desolate land far away from the true Spill continent, a silver silhouette and a blue silhouette were crossing each other at lightning speed. Waves of terrifyingly powerful energy rippled out from the center of the collision between the two attacks. In this desolate land, countless mountains and boulders were flattened. All of a sudden, the silver figure came to a stop. "Hi Lord." That blue figure also hurriedly retracted his attack to prevent his attack from accidentally injuring Yi Qianren, who had suddenly retracted his attack. The latter didn't speak. He only raised his hand and rubbed the 10-directional dragon ring on his left ring finger. Was it an illusion? His heart suddenly palpitated. Yi Qianxian's finger gently rubbed the 10-directional dragon ring. Then, he fiercely waved his sleeve. "Go back." No matter whether it was an illusion or not, he had to go back and see for himself. Only then could he feel at ease. Outside the holy capital of the Empire of Qin, in the 100,000 mountain range, Luo Qingtong's figure fiercely jumped, avoiding the wall of energy that Elder Xie had condensed behind her. She fiercely rushed into a nearby dense bush. "Humph, you take it with you. Put all these things in the places I marked on this map." Luo Qingtong quickly summoned the little golden mouse from the 9-layer exquisite pagoda. Then, she tied 2 small parcels on its body. Finally, she placed a mountain range map on the little pig's little hoof. This map was a topographic map of the mountain range that Luo Qingtong had used her eye technique to half-heartedly memorize as she ran. There were small red dots scattered on the map. The specific locations were recorded on the map. It was very clear at a glance. Remember, you have to put all these things in. Don't miss a single one. As Luo Qingtong spoke, she raised her hand and pushed the pig and mouse, who had been tied up, into the depths of the bushes. This might be the only way she could escape. Whether it succeeded or not, it all depended on the little pig. The little pig was usually very unreliable, but at this time, Luo Qingtong could only trust it. She was being chased by Elder Xie. It was impossible for her to free time to do those things. Of course, Elder Xie wouldn't let her take them. This time was different from the last time when she dealt with Silver Sword's group. At that time, Luo Qingtong was prepared in advance. But now, if she dared to do anything in front of Elder Xie, he would definitely find out. "Hey, what's this?" Little Pig stared at the map in his hoof and the small package on his body. "Woman, don't tell me you're thinking of using the move you used on the Silver Sword sect? I'm telling you, it won't work. This Elder Xie is a Saint Transcendence expert. No matter how many beasts there are, they can't do anything to him. And there are no sacred beasts in this mountain range." In the end, this was the mountain range near the holy capital of the Empire of Qin. Sacred beasts wouldn't live in such a dangerous place. Last time, in the mountain range near the main city of the Black Field, there were no sacred beasts in the beast tide that Luo Qingtong summoned. Chapter 1121. Nope. Luo Qingtong waved her hand at it, then leaped and flashed away. "Oh my God! Let's fight!" Seeing Luo Qingtong leave, Little Pig gritted its teeth and carried the small package on its back. Although it was called a small package, it was actually bigger than its body. However, when it turned around and saw the appearance of the little gold mouse, its heart instantly calmed down. Squeak squeak. The little gold mouse was pressed under the package, and its round little butt twisted and struggled with all its might. It was about to use all its strength, but it was still unable to escape from the package. It could only pitifully open its cute and large eyes, and its eyes were filled with tears as it watched Luo Qingtong's figure disappear into the distance. Its great treasure, wah! All right. Obediently listen to your Grandpa Pig, and I'll take you to find her later. Little Pig said as he patted Little Pig with his little hoof. Then, he lifted Little Pig up. Let's go. The little gold mouse was lifted up by Little Pig, and after swaying left and right for a while carrying the small package, it finally steadied its body. Its 4 short little legs struggled, and when it heard that Little Pig would take it to find the great treasure, its round mouse face was instantly filled with fighting spirit. Its pair of round eyes even sparkled brightly. Squeak squeak. It wanted to find the great treasure. The little gold mouse stomped its 4 limbs and followed Little Pig's footsteps. 1 pig and 1 mouse ran out with its short little legs. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. When Little Pig and the little gold mouse ran out, Luo Qingtong had already led Elder Xia away. Bang bang bang. The latter's attacks came one after another. Luo Qingtong tried her best to conserve the strength within her body, and exerted her eye technique to the limit, ceaselessly moving about in the dense forest of the mountain range. Boom boom boom. In the mountain range, the figures of the 2 people, one chasing and one fleeing, ceaselessly flashing towards the depths of the forest. Elder Xia's extraordinary sage aura was sufficient to scare away any demon beasts patrolling in the surroundings. Along with the passage of time, the distance between Luo Qingtong and him was pulled closer bit by bit. B***tch, let's see how long you can run later. Sensing that Luo Qingtong was getting closer and closer to him, Elder Xia sneered in his heart. It would not be long before he could catch her. He laughed heartily, looking at Luo Qingtong with eyes full of lust. When I catch you later, I'll have a good taste of you, and then I'll let you die a painful death. He licked his lips as he spoke. His wrinkled face was filled with a disgusting smile. It was a pity that he couldn't train such a rare talent by his side. However, such a difficult woman was indeed too dangerous. This was Elder Xia's first time encountering a martial emperor who could escape from him for so long. But it didn't matter. Soon, all of this would be over. Elder Xia's lewd laughter was extremely horrifying. Luo Qingtong was not affected at all. She glanced at Elder Xia and continued to move forward quickly. In her mind, spiritual connections were established one after another. 1, 2, 3. Through her eye technique, a huge topographic map of the mountain range appeared in her retina. Following the establishment of the spiritual connections in her mind, one red dot after another appeared on the topographic map of the mountain range in her eyes. A vague outline of a figure suddenly appeared on the topographic map. At the same time, Chapter 1122. Elder Xia's voice, which was as sharp as an owl, rang out. Bang! 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 Luo Qingtong's figure was forced to a corner of the stone wall by the qi wall that he had created. At the same time, Elder Xia's figure instantly moved from not far away. In an instant, his hands were like sharp claws, fiercely grabbing at her. Under such circumstances, Luo Qingtong was surrounded by qi walls on her left and right, a stone wall behind her, and Elder Xia, whose gaze was cold and ruthless, with a perverted expression, was in front of her. She was practically forced into a desperate situation. At this moment, she didn't have much strength left in her body. It wasn't enough to break through the qi walls on her left and right, so she could escape from the side. Slut, let's see how you escape this time. Elder Xia looked at Luo Qingtong with a perverted gaze. His hands suddenly grabbed at Luo Qingtong's chest. Looking at his movements, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly flashed with a ruthless aura. Buzz! Just as Elder Xia was about to grab her, at the last red dot in the mountain range, the little pig was using its little hooves to dig a hole. As it dug, it muttered, "Why in the world do you want to bury these things?" As it spoke, it used its hind hooves to kick the little golden mouse next to it. "Hey, bring the things here." Squeak! The little golden mouse, who was half squatting at the side, hastily opened a small bag beside it and took out a spiritual tool brimming with rich aura. Then, it held it in its mouth, flapped its limbs, and ran to the little pig's side. It buried the spiritual tool in the hole that the little pig had dug. Or rather, it was inserted in the hole. Buzz! As the spiritual tool entered the hole, the last connection point in Luo Qingtong's mind was confirmed. In the next second, the huge topographic map of the mountain range was reflected in her eyes. The red dots on the map impressively connected to form the outline of a huge soaring dragon. Pulse raising. As the last red dot appeared on the topographic map of the mountain range, Luo Qingtong's eyes lit up instantly. Facing Elder Xie's attack, she suddenly half-squatted on the ground. Boom! She pressed her palm onto the ground. In an instant, the entire mountain range began to tremble violently, with the river as the vein and the mountain as the dragon head. For extremes 8 desolations, heaven and earth, soaring dragon formation, rise. Luo Qingtong pressed her palm down. In an instant, with the place where she stood as the center, the ground cracked and the stone walls cracked. Behind Luo Qingtong's feet, a huge and sturdy body suddenly appeared. An incomparably huge transparent dragon suddenly rose from the cracked earth. The dragon head was right where Luo Qingtong was. The girl stepped on the dragon's head and held the dragon's horn in her hand. Following the high-spirited roar, it stood tall on the dragon's head and looked disdainfully in all directions. The heaven and earth dragon veins rise. 8 desolations, soaring dragon. Luo Qingtong used a formation to gather the mountain aura in the 10 directions mountain range into a dragon and summoned it all at once. Rumble. As the soaring dragon rose, Elder Xie's attack fiercely collided with the power of the soaring dragon in an instant. That soaring dragon was formed from the mountain range in all directions. Elder Xie's claw bombarded its body. The force of the explosion was all absorbed by the surrounding mountain range. Rumble. Chapter 11:23. Plop. Little Pig and the Little Gold Mouse had just finished filling up the hole they had dug. In an instant, they felt the earth tremble. Plop. The pig and the mouse were shaken and fell to the ground. Hey, don't sit on my head. Little Pig stretched out his little hoof and pulled away the little gold mouse that was lying on his head. Holy shit! This woman! He was dumbstruck as he looked at the huge dragon head in the distance. This woman was simply too awesome. She actually thought of using the energy of the mountain range to form a dragon. That's right. Since ancient times, there had been this idea of a mountain range resembling a dragon. Not to mention, this mountain range was close to the holy capital of the Empire of Qin. It had also received a lot of dragon energy and luck from the holy dynasty of the Empire of Qin. The phenomenon of the mountain range resembling a dragon was stronger than other places, and the energy of the mountain range was also denser. My master is too awesome. Little Pig flapped his 4 little hooves and ran toward Luo Qingtong. Halfway through, he suddenly felt that he had forgotten something. When he turned around and saw the little gold mouse was still spinning around dizzily, he immediately rolled his eyes and ran back. So troublesome. As he spoke, he lifted one of his little hooves and threw the little gold mouse onto his body. Then, he spread his 4 hooves and ran toward Luo Qingtong. At the same time, Bei Qing and the others, who had followed Elder Xie's attack into the mountain range, also felt the intense tremors in the depths of the mountain range. Let's go. Let's quickly go and take a look. Feeling the powerful aura spreading in the air, the faces of the few people instantly hardened, and they hurriedly rushed over. Rumble. In the depths of the mountain range, Luo Qingtong controlled the mountain range to transform into a dragon. After blocking Elder Xie's attack, she suddenly slapped the dragon's horn. Roar. The huge transparent dragon head instantly rose up. After a long and resounding roar, the huge dragon formed by the energy of the mountain range completely rose from the ground. Then, with a sweep of its tail, the entire body of the dragon swept towards Elder Xie, who was still in shock. Bang bang bang. When Luo Qingtong controlled the dragon to make such a move, in the surroundings of the mountain range, the spirit tools that the little pigs and little gold mice had dug and buried in the pits had shockingly exploded one after another and shattered into powder. The spiritual qi inside was exhausted, and all of it sank into the ground, turning into a rich array formation energy that helped Luo Qingtong control this mountain range dragon. Rumble. The dragon's long tail slammed into Elder Xie's body. Before he could recover from the shock of Luo Qingtong's sudden awakening of the mountain, he was sent flying by the dragon's tail. Then, in the next second, that thick dragon body instantly coiled up. Then, the head of the dragon raised up high and bit down violently. Rumble. In an instant, Elder Xie's figure was completely submerged in the attack of the huge dragon formed by the mountain range. As for Luo Qingtong, she had already jumped down from the top of the dragon's head when she commanded the dragon to attack. Bang! She stood on top of a huge tree nearby and slightly raised her eyebrows as she looked at the billowing dust and violent energy in front of her. Master! At this moment, Little Pig ran over while carrying the little gold mouse on his back. Oh my god, that was so cool! This time, Elder Xie is definitely going to die. Let's go back and celebrate. Be careful. Chapter 11:24. Bang! When Little Pig's voice rang out, Luo Qingtong's sharp intuition also detected the terrifying killing intent behind her. Boom! She quickly dodged to the side. In the blink of an eye, the huge tree she was standing on was blasted into pieces. Luo Qingtong's long hair fluttered in the air as she suddenly knelt down on the ground in a half-kneeling position. She raised her head and saw Elder Xie's figure appear in the area where the dragon was violently attacking. Elder Xie was in an extremely sorry state. His robe was almost torn to shreds and hung on his body in tatters. His entire body was covered in dust and his hair was completely charred. He looked no different from a beggar. However, although Elder Xie was in a sorry state, the aura around him was even stronger than before. Slut! Elder Xie looked at Luo Qingtong as if he wanted to eat her alive. He had been accumulating strength for many years and was waiting for the right time to break through to the Saint Sovereign realm. This way, he could consolidate his realm and it would be more beneficial for his future advancement. But now, under the attack of the dragon, he had no choice but to use so much of his stored strength to forcefully break through the barrier between the Saint Sovereign realm and the Saint Sovereign realm. Although he was fine, he had completely cut off his path of advancement. Just based on this point alone, he wouldn't be able to vent his hatred even if he ate Luo Qingtong alive. This slut! This slut! Elder Xie's anger reached the heavens. At this moment, he didn't have the slightest bit of romantic feelings for Luo Qingtong. He wanted to capture Luo Qingtong and use the most vicious and sinister method to torture her to death. Only then would he be able to vent the hatred in his heart. Ah! Elder Xie roared furiously. In the next second, he suddenly flew up. Like a vulture, he opened his sleeves and attacked Luo Qingtong. Elder Xie didn't hold back in this attack. The strength of a Saint Sovereign Realm expert was revealed without a doubt. Although using the strength of a sage expert to deal with a martial emperor girl was really too much of a waste of talent. However, Elder Xie had suffered so many losses at the hands of Luo Qingtong. It was impossible for him to treat her as an ordinary martial emperor. Which martial emperor realm expert could escape from his hands one after another, and which martial emperor realm expert could make him so miserable? He would use all his strength to capture this woman and not give her any chance to escape or fight back. At this moment, Elder Xie had already treated Luo Qingtong as an expert of the same level as him. This woman was too cunning and had too many strange tricks up her sleeves. Rumble. The power around Elder Xie was extremely violent. From the moment he leapt up, the waves of energy extended from where he was, causing the surrounding air to tremble violently. The surrounding mountains were also trembling. Ravines and crevices were formed. Countless boulders and trees began to collapse under the tremors. Around Luo Qingtong, countless spiritual energy condensed into a domain, enveloping the space around her. Saint's sovereign realm, condensing spiritual energy into a domain. In the Saint domain, all the spiritual energy of heaven and earth had to listen to his orders and be controlled by him. Others couldn't snatch it. Buzz. As soon as the Saint domain appeared, all the spiritual energy around Luo Qingtong froze, imprisoning her inside. Slut, let's see how you're going to run now. Elder Xie's face was full of malevolence. He appeared in front of Luo Qingtong in an instant and grabbed her fiercely. Chapter 11:25. Scram. An incomparably cold voice resounded through the sky. As this voice sounded, in an instant, the entire mountain range and even the air trembled violently. The spiritual energy that had been imprisoned around Luo Qingtong instantly boiled up. Then, bang! 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 Countless violent sounds rang out. In an instant, the sacred domain that froze the space around Luo Qingtong shattered. What? Seeing this scene, Elder Xie's eyes suddenly widened. His hands were still in the posture of grabbing Luo Qingtong, but the expression on his face was horrified to the extreme. A single voice was enough to shatter his Saint domain. How strong was the other party? Could it be a powerhouse above the Saint realm? But how could there be such a powerhouse in the true Spill continent? This place was simply, wait. Suddenly, Elder Xie seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes widened. His bulging eyes looked as if they were about to pop out of their sockets at this moment. There was someone who could do this. But how could it be? How could the other party inexplicably attack him? Just as Elder Xie was horrified, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly lit up. She recognized the voice. Yi Qianxian. She was about to turn around when a man's voice rang in her ears. Don't worry about me. This Elder Xie, how did he deal with you before? Bully him back for me. Behind her, Yi Qianxian stood in the air, wearing a silver robe, looking down at the 9 heavens. Okay. Listening to the man's domineering words, Luo Qingtong's eyes instantly curved. Her figure leaped up in an instant. In the next second, the life and death dual polarity sword appeared in her hands. Heaven battling art. Luo Qingtong fiercely slashed out with her sword. Elder Xie, who was still immersed in his shock, didn't notice it and was immediately sent flying. Bastard! Elder Xie smashed onto the ground with his face covered in dust. His originally distressed appearance became even more unbearable. A dignified Saint Master was sent flying by a martial emperor. Shame and humiliation caused Elder Xie's body to tremble violently. He slammed the ground with a bang and was about to fly up to teach Luo Qingtong a lesson. However, just as he was about to move, an extremely terrifying pressure descended on his body, ruthlessly suppressing the power that was about to overflow from his body. Pooh! Elder Xie was unable to use his power and was suppressed instead. He immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Ming Zun. He looked at the silver-robed man who appeared behind Luo Qingtong in shock. His expression was extremely shocked. How? Why did Ming Zun suddenly attack him? Before Elder Xie could come back to his senses, boom! Luo Qingtong's next sword light arrived. In an instant, he was like a huge rubber ball. With a boom, he was sent flying by Luo Qingtong's sword light again. Bang, bang, bang. The sword light in Luo Qingtong's hand slashed out again and again. Old dog, did you have fun chasing me just now? Luo Qingtong's smile was indescribably evil and enchanting. However, the gaze in his eyes was extremely cold and callous. She remembered all the words that Elder Xie had said before. He wanted to snatch her treasure and train her by his side? She was going to grant him his wish. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.